Chapter 1350. Yin-Yang was speechless. You might as well not have said it. He's the creator of heaven and earth, how can we compare? Also, he's almost omnipotent when he attains the starry sky. Of course, he has to do it before he attains the starry sky. Why don't you say that he had already done it when he was my age? Yin-Yang sighed, resigned to his fate. Actually, it doesn't matter anymore. Let's just train by fighting. When Emmy wakes up, I'll ask it to think of a way. Even if I can't recover the soul-quenching spring, I can at least give the East Celestial Palace an explanation and leave this unreasonable place as soon as possible. I can't afford to offend you, but I can't afford to hide. I hope I'll never set foot on this paradise of the human realm, the holy land of cultivators. Yin-Yang was completely speechless and helpless towards this lord of the East Celestial Palace. About 20 days later, Emmy finally woke up. When Emmy woke up, Yin-Yang's eyes were already brimming with tears of joy. Yin-Yang would be lying if he said that he was not afraid of the 20 days of actual combat training. The people he fought these days were not the people he was familiar with, but complete strangers who did not know Yin-Yang's background. They only thought that Yin-Yang was a half-step Saint Lord demon, so naturally, they were merciless in their attacks, killing him without mercy. While Yin-Yang was actively fighting, he had to be careful of the strength of his counterattack. It would be fine if he really injured or crippled his opponent, as it would not be a problem to heal them. However, if he really killed them, Yin-Yang could imagine what Dongfang Haoran would say about him, how he would criticize him, how he would. Furthermore, Yin-Yang had practiced all of his combat techniques countless times, but only the divine edge had he repeatedly used the first 3 moves to counter the attack. Under such an extremely disadvantageous situation, Yin-Yang could clearly feel that his cultivation base had improved further. His realm was gradually approaching the point of breaking through the realm. His combat power had more than doubled compared to 20 days ago. Apart from that, the first 3 moves of the Destiny Blade technique had also reached a wondrous state where he could execute them as he wished. He was extremely familiar with them and could command them as if they were part of his body. Such a tough battle was already difficult enough, but what was even more difficult was Dongfang Haoran's dozens of questions a day. Yin-Yang could not take it anymore. It would be fine if he could defeat this man. In fact, Yin-Yang had once been driven into a corner by Dongfang Haoran's question and launched an attack. He had used his strongest technique right off the bat, and he had even met Dongfang Haoran head-on. This was a technique that could kill a second-level Saint King, but it could not even shake Dongfang Haoran's protective air shield. The only result was that Yin-Yang had only managed to take 3 steps back. With such a gap, it was impossible for him to win. Naturally, he would only suffer even more after that. Emmy, think of something. Yin-Yang immediately pushed the blame to him. You sucked their soul-quenching spring dry earlier, and now they're holding us back and won't let us go. What do you think we should do? Emmy was confused. What's going on? I actually caused so much trouble while I was sleeping? However, Emmy was thrilled when it saw that there was a segment of lotus root growing out of its lower body. Yes, once I wake up, everything will be fine. Isn't it just a soul-quenching spring? Before I came into contact with the soul-quenching spring, perhaps I didn't even know what it was, but now that I've come into contact with it and sucked all its energy dry, I know what kind of energy it is. How hard can it be to replicate it? Yin-Yang did not want to drag it out any longer. He, who was in the midst of a battle, suddenly leaped out of the circle and shouted, I can sense the spirit's grave. The second-grade holy monarch on the other side was completely at a loss. Was this demon crazy? Was the battle between humans and demons something that could be ended with just a sentence from him? Dongfang Haoran, who had been hiding at the side, was overjoyed when he heard the news. He sprung up and asked, Where? Yin-Yang pointed casually, right there. He pointed at the sky above Dongfang Haoran's head. Dongfang Haoran immediately activated his deific consciousness and began to probe. After a long time, he said, There's nothing. Yin-Yang grinned, Palace Lord, can't you feel it? I thought you've sensed it after being busy for so long. Dongfang Haoran blushed. He did not expect that he could not even sense the spirit's grave. Could there really be such a reclusive expert in this world who was detached from worldly affairs? However, when he thought of the fact that these experts had the ability to open up space at will and form their own world, it did not seem unacceptable that they were superior to him. Then, shall we begin? Dongfang Haoran looked at Yunyang curiously. Even I can't feel it, but this child can feel it and can even go in. This child's fate is truly unparalleled. He really wanted to follow him in and see the supreme expert up close. Just as Dongfang Haoran's voice trailed off, Yunyang sprung up under the watchful eyes of the crowd and vanished into thin air, vanishing from everyone's sight. It was not that the crowd could not sense anything, but they could only feel an unimaginably massive mental energy flash. There was no other trace of it. Then, Yunyang returned in a strange manner, shocking the crowd once more. They did not know how he had disappeared just now, and they did not know why he had appeared again. Looking at Yunyang's tired face, there was a tinge of joy. Did this mean that the revival of the soul-quenching spring was possible? Then, the crowd watched as Yunyang waved his hand and a ball of gray aura of the soul fell into the soul-quenching spring. As the gray aura of the soul fell into the soul-quenching spring, gray smoke rose from the dried-up soul-quenching spring. It was actually starting to revive. As for Dongfang Haoran, who had witnessed this entire process, although he had a calm expression the entire time, deep within his eyes, there was a flash of confusion. He didn't think that there would actually be such a powerful existence in this world that had surpassed his understanding. He was able to turn the soul-quenching spring, a spiritual creation that could seize the heavens and earth, back to life. It wasn't just Dongfang Haoran who was stunned. Everyone present was stunned as well. Everyone was looking at this mysterious scene, but they were all pondering a question. Now that the soul-quenching spring was beginning to recover, what was that dark gray aura? How could it be so miraculous? Although this was the main point, it wasn't the most important thing right now. The most important thing was that Sect Master Yun had entered the mysterious spirit's graveyard and brought out a treasure that could revive the soul-quenching spring. Furthermore, he had directly completed his task. The subtle feeling of accomplishing something without even knowing it made all the experts present want to curse in their hearts. There were so many of them, let alone seeing or recognizing anything. They could barely feel anything, yet, when they faced Yunyang, they had to maintain their composure and wear an expression of, "I see," to prove that the experts of the East Celestial Palace were all amazing and knew everything. Yet, it was obvious that they did not know anything in their bones. Don't be fooled by the Lord Palace Lord's relaxed expression, as if everything was under his control. He would never be any better than them. Therefore, when they heard Yunyang say those words in a reserved manner, all the experts of the East Celestial Palace had a bad feeling. The spirit's grave lives up to its name. The Lord Palace Lord said. Yunyang chuckled dryly, "You're too kind. You're too kind." All the experts were speechless for a good while. According to their understanding of the Lord Palace Lord over the years, the Lord Palace Lord must be cursing in his heart right now. He must be as baffled as they were. In fact, for the Palace Lord to be able to pretend to be so confident, I understand that it must be very difficult for him to do so. However, he was pretending. He did it. What should we do? We can't show our cowardice. The Lord Palace Lord wants his face, but do we not? The spirit's graveyard lives up to its name, ha ha ha. Every one of them had the air of an immortal and were confident as they praised in a reserved manner. Yunyang could finally leave the East Celestial Palace with a proper reason. He had fulfilled Dongfang Haoran's request, and he had done it in the best and highest way possible. Not only was the soul-quenching spring as good as new, but according to Emmy, the spring had undergone such a change. It could not be rebuilt without destruction, and with the nourishment of primordial energy, its effect was even stronger than before. Whether the soul-quenching spring was destroyed by Yunyang or Emmy, it was more than enough to make up for it. However, it still needed hundreds of years to nourish and recover. To the people of the East Celestial Palace, hundreds of years was still considered time. Therefore, everyone was very happy. Based on this premise, Yun Yang bade his farewell without another word. Dongfang Haoren was naturally not happy about this, but he was no longer in a position to make Yun Yang stay. He wore a rare dark expression, as if he was going to fight someone with all his might. You must be extra careful when you leave this time. Never, ever. Dongfang Haoren sighed. I've never thought of letting you leave so early. Fate makes fools of people. Sigh. Yin Yang had long sensed this. From the three conditions that Dongfang Haoren had raised, it was not difficult to tell that the latter had never thought of letting him leave. Furthermore, Dongfang Haoren did not have any ill intentions. He really only wanted to groom Yin Yang and make him rise to the next level, so that he would have the power to protect himself. Looking at Dongfang Haoren's unhappy face, Yin Yang could not bear to see him leave, but he insisted, how could I not know that Senior is thinking for me? However, I must leave. If I'm always protected by you, I'm afraid I won't have any achievements in the future. Nonsense, how can you not have any achievements here? Don't tell me that those who cultivate here for their entire lives only end up with no achievements. Dongfang Haoren said angrily, with your current progress, I can let you step into the level of a saint in a month at most. Within a year, you can even reach the third level of a saint. When that time comes, you can go wherever you want. Now, I've just pushed you to a position where the wind and waves are the fiercest. It's the time when everyone's eyes are on you, and you want to go out and wander around at this critical juncture? Do you know that you're the continent's hero now, but there are too many who are not convinced by your title. Moreover, Dongfang Haoren seemed like he wanted to say something, but after some thought, he swallowed his words and changed the topic. The bound of universe has always been filled with peerless geniuses and heroes, but there have always been despicable, shameless, and jealous villains. The demon race's lapdogs are not uncommon either. Do you think that everyone in this world is good? That they will all be kind to you? Dongfang Haoren was exasperated. Even if your cultivation base has improved and you look like you can protect yourself, you're going out with a fox's head and you can't change as you please. If you're really killed, as long as the other party feigns ignorance, not only will you die in vain, we who want to avenge you and seek justice won't even have the right to speak up. Dongfang Haoren said angrily, haven't you considered these things at all? Yin Yang mused, Senior's words are reasonable, but the higher the level of cultivation in the bound of universe, the more emphasis is placed on the state of mind and the law of karma. Are there really high-level experts who are willing to risk the rebound of their inner demons to commit such a despicable act? Aren't they afraid that the path ahead will be cut off and that it's hard to walk on the path of Tao? Dongfang Haoren chuckled and said, your thinking seems reasonable, but it's actually biased. Let me ask you, what's the prerequisite for the rebound of the inner demons? At least, you have to have a conscience in your heart to do so, right? If a person has done countless evil deeds, why would he think that killing you is wrong? He will only think that what he's doing is right and that it's a hindrance in his heart if he doesn't kill you. Then, where does the so-called inner demons come from? Just like the demon race or the human scum who's betrayed and defected to the demon race. From their standpoint, it's the right thing for them to kill you. It's what they should do. Why would they say that it's hard to walk on the path of Tao? Your identity is important now, but don't think too highly of yourself and think that you're untouchable, alright? As long as it's a matter of perspective, anyone, any living being, might have a reason to kill you. Dongfang Haoren sucked in a deep breath. Since you've made up your mind, I'll tell you one last thing. Only those with a bottom line have shame, morality, and karma. But if there's no bottom line, then everyone has to be careful. Yin Yang said, if that's the case, won't good people suffer a lot? If evil people don't have retribution, why are there so many people who abide by the rules and be good people? Dongfang Haoren asked faintly, evil people don't necessarily have retribution, but do good people only want retribution? It was a light question, but Yin Yang's heart was shaken. Was being a good person only for retribution? Yin Yang fell into an unprecedented silence, speechless for a moment. Since it's not, why do you keep it in your heart? Will you give up being a good person because good people don't have retribution? Can you stop being a good person because evil people don't have retribution? Is there a price to pay for being a good person? Dongfang Haoran walked forward slowly, his voice filled with a sense of righteousness. Yin Yang was still silent as he followed behind him, feeling that the path in his heart was suddenly broadened infinitely. Not bad, not bad. Not bad indeed. I'm not being a good person for any reason. I just, simply want to be a person with a clear conscience. Chapter 1351. At the most critical juncture of life, I wish you all the best. Walk steadily and break through. Every year, I would receive a lot of photos of acceptance letters. That was a very happy moment for me. Last year, I edited everyone's admission letters and showed them off to everyone. My family. So many admission letters. Awesome, right? This year, I hope to receive even more than last year. At that time, I will explode and celebrate for my little brothers and sisters. Success. Victory. I am the Supreme Being wishes the students of the Feng family a smooth college entrance examination. Currently typing, please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1352. Humans create karma and thus bear karma. It has nothing to do with good or evil, they will all be entangled by karma. It's just a good cause and a bad effect. Dongfang Haoran asked again and smiled faintly, karma is never determined by the heavens. It's just that when humans plant karma, they also destroy karma. Yin Yang, don't be too extreme in your thinking. However, don't hesitate when it's time to act. Do it when it's time to be extreme. I've planned to let you break through to the 3rd level of Saint King before you step into the mortal world. After all, by then, even if you encounter any accidents, you can easily overcome them and sweep away the evil and the bound of universe, cleansing yourself of karma. However, if you go out now, your fate is uncertain, and your future is even more unpredictable. Yin Yang felt a surge of heroism. Even if I go out now, I can still sweep away the evil. Dongfang Haoran pondered for a moment and tossed a spatial ring over, saying, don't delay your cultivation. In here are the cultivation resources I'm giving you. It should be enough for you to cultivate dozens of times. Enough resources to cultivate dozens of times? Yin Yang's eyes brightened. He had just entered the spirit's grave and obtained a large amount of resources. Even from Yin Yang's perspective, it was a sea of resources. Now that he had enough resources to cultivate dozens of times, it meant that he had earned 10 times more than 1,000 spiritual herbs, 10 bottles of spiritual pills, and 1,000 supreme-grade spiritual jade pieces. He had profited. He had earned another fortune. That was not all. Dongfang Haoran tossed another green spatial bangle to Yin Yang and said, this is a spiritual plant bangle. There are 100,000 spiritual herb spirits inside. They are the unique spirits of the East Celestial Palace. The East Celestial Palace might face a calamity in the future. When the nest is overturned, eggs cannot rest. I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of them then. I'm handing them to you, I hope you can take good care of them for me. 100,000 spiritual herb spirits. Yin Yang felt his entire body tremble. This huge golden mountain that had suddenly descended from the sky had smashed on top of his head without any warning. The effect of these 100,000 spiritual herb spirits on his deific consciousness was unparalleled. Emmy, who had received the news at the same time, was also inexplicably excited, chirping non-stop. Go. Dongfang Haoran turned around and leisurely disappeared into the misty gate of the eastern extreme heavenly palace like a white cloud. In the next moment, the entire eastern extreme heavenly palace was covered in mist. Soon after, there was no trace of him left. If there's any danger, you can come to the heavenly palace to hide. If someone wants to kill you, you must not show any mercy. Yin Yang, who was overjoyed to leave the celestial palace, had intentionally or unintentionally overlooked a key phrase in Dongfang Haoran's last words. He did not know if he would be completely different when they met again. Yin Yang was still dressed in black and wore a complete mask as he glided down the eastern celestial mountain. When he reached the foot of the mountain and looked up, he could only see clouds and mist, not the heavenly palace. "Thank you." Yin Yang uttered the words seriously. Yin Yang's gains from this trip to the East Celestial Palace were unusually huge. Although the total amount of wealth was not as good as the trip to the demon realm, the quality was indeed greatly improved. However, what Yin Yang cared about the most was the peace in his heart. Although Dongfang Haoran and the other old geezers of the East Extreme Heavenly Palace had been pranked by Dongfang Haoran and the other old geezers, they seemed to be at loggerheads with each other. In spite of this, Yin Yang knew very well that it was these people, these seemingly bored old fellows with no sense of propriety, who had guarded the human aristocratic families for hundreds of thousands of years. They were fully deserving of being the backbone of mankind, and at the same time, they were also the group of people most worthy of everyone's respect. Their pranks were just because they were lonely, they didn't care about their image at all. Could one's image be more important than the safety of mankind? "I've done what I could, I've stuck to what I could, why should I care about my image?" Did he still care about what the world thought of him? Was this the view of the secular world? In the eyes of these powerhouses, these matters were not worth mentioning at all. After traveling another few hundred miles, Yin Yang found a secluded spot and entered his deific consciousness space to open the green spatial bangle. It was Emmy's relentless urging that had caused Yin Yang to activate the spiritual plant bracelet so quickly. In an instant, groups of spiritual herb spirits flew out like a swarm of locusts. As far as the eye could see, the spiritual medicine sprites all had the appearance of a little doll the size of a pinky finger. Some of them even had the appearance of animals, such as little dragonflies with human faces, little butterflies, little bees. The biggest similarity of these creatures was that they were so hairy that their entire bodies were filled with spiritual energy that was almost overflowing. And when this group of children saw the spiritual medicine field that stretched to the horizon in the divine sense space, the abundant spiritual qi that almost condensed into a substance, the faintly discernible qi of the great Tao, and the primordial purple qi that filled the entire space, the little fellows who were initially fearful were filled with joy when they saw what they saw with their own eyes. They cheered in unison and rushed in. Is this heaven? It was undeniable that this was the spirit's favorite environment. It was more suitable than the East Celestial Palace and more suitable for their growth. However, Emmy was the happiest about the spirit's arrival. The arrival of these spirits had brought an unprecedented breath of vitality to the deific consciousness space. Compared to the original qi of vitality, the mainstream in the space now was the breath of vitality. These were two concepts that were similar in nature, but their manifestations were completely different. For example, this place was originally filled with plants and the air of vitality could be seen everywhere. However, because there was a pure form of life here, and it was a unique life form like the spiritual herb spirits, it made the meaning of life more precious and complete. This was already a higher concept. The transformation was completed almost at the same time the spiritual herb spirits arrived. Emmy waved its vines happily, instructing the little fellows to find the spiritual herbs that were most suitable for them to live in. When these little fellows settled down, they would be the artisans who were born to manage the spiritual herb fields. With this group of little fellows around, the growth rate of the spirit medicine would once again soar, and there would be no accidents. The change that followed was that the concentration and activity of the spiritual qi in the space would at least double compared to before the arrival of the spirits. Emmy was still planting the superb heaven and earth resources that Yun Yang had just given it and Dongfang Haoran had given it into the herb field. The scale of the herb field expanded rapidly by dozens of acres. All the little fellows watched the scene in amazement, dancing with joy. Although they did not understand it, it did not stop them from cheering for the change. The more spiritual herbs there were, the more suitable it would be for them to live and grow. Once Yun Yang saw the light of day again, he walked 3,000 miles in his black robe. His speed was like the wind, and his cultivation base of a half-step Saint Monarch gave Yun Yang a subtle feeling of, I'm free to fly in the sky, I'm free to leap in the vast sea. The level of comfort he felt was indescribable. The feeling of being light and refreshed was simply too amazing. No, there was something else that he was not happy about. It was this fox's head. To think that he, Yin Yang, could have an exceptional appearance, a pretty boy among pretty boys. Pfft, a born young master, a handsome young man. Now, he had turned into such a ghastly, demonic look. He had no choice but to wear a mask all day long. Although he had gained a lot and was the wealthiest in the world, he was too ashamed to face anyone. However, those old fellows seemed to have done it on purpose. Yin Yang thought about it carefully over the past few days and gradually came back to his senses. Although the palace lord of Western Heaven Holy Palace, Shimen Fengfu, had come to help him remove the seal, it was not the main reason. Otherwise, with his status and the basic level of self-restraint he had to possess, the fellow would not have left just like that even if Yin Yang had accidentally offended him. No matter what, he was a great hero of the bound of universe's human race. If it was just a matter of pride, he should have helped him remove the shackles first. There must be something fishy about this. Furthermore, Yin Yang had not wasted his time in the East Celestial Palace. Although his cultivation base was insufficient and he could not do anything about the shackles, if Shimen Fengfu could remove the shackles, there was no reason that Dongfang Haoran, whose cultivation base was similar to Shimen Fengfu's, could do nothing about it. In addition, there were at least 3 old fellows whose cultivation base was at the level of Saint in the East Celestial Palace. If they really wanted to, they could definitely remove the seal with their combined efforts. He had asked for help in secret, but the few old fellows had pretended to be mute and deaf. Even if one were to take 10,000 steps back and say that it would be extremely difficult to remove the shackles on his body, and that it would require Shimen Fengfu's unique secret technique to do so, the relationship between the Eastern Celestial Palace and the Western Heaven Holy Palace was, at most, something that Dongfang Haoran could do with just a few words, so why was he unwilling? Furthermore, Shimen Fengfu was petty and did not give face to the East Celestial Palace. With the spirit's grave as a bargaining chip, Shimen Fengfu did not believe that Shimen Fengfu would not be moved. However, there was no news from the other party at all. If that's the case, Shimen Fengfu is probably not the only one who can remove the shackles. It's just that those old fellows want to mess with me. Yin Yang was naturally annoyed by this. Even though he was now free and in a good mood, there was still a hint of depression hidden in his heart. Yin Yang, who was high up in the sky, looked at the endless forest that seemed to stretch all the way to the horizon. The Holy Land of Tian Fa was not far away. During the battle in the Holy Land of Tian Fa, Yin Yang had befriended many kings of the mystical beasts. Now that he was out again, he could not help having the thought of visiting them. Of course, he also hoped that he could ask for help from the top mystical beasts in the Holy Land of Tian Fa to try and remove the damned shackles on him. Strictly speaking, the Holy Land of Tian Fa, the bound of universe's human race, and the realm of demonic beasts were the top 3 races in this world. The top mystical beasts in the Holy Land of Tian Fa should have the same ability as the Demon Emperor and Dongfang Haoran, right? Asking for help was the fastest and best way for Yin Yang to remove the shackles on him. Seeing that his destination was not far away, Yin Yang increased his speed. At this moment, a sinister voice came from behind him, the fox demon in front. Stop. Fox demon? Stop. Yin Yang's expression was one of surprise as he sighed. I had covered my face and even my head. No one would be able to see my face at first glance. Yet, the person behind me actually knew that my appearance was that of a fox demon. Not bad, not bad, this ability to see through things is really amazing. Even I want to learn it. Yin Yang stopped in his tracks and turned back to see the 4 men landing in front of him, grinning maliciously at him. Their unfriendly intentions were clear. The people who had come were 4 saint lords. Seeing that the enemy was right in front of him, Yin Yang did not even say a word. He pulled out his saber and attacked. With a flash of the saber light, it lit up the cloudy sky. His saber moved casually and his body moved along with it. The saber sliced through the space of 300 feet as it attacked ferociously. The moment he attacked, Yun Yang recalled what Dongfang Haoran had told him before they parted. If someone attacks you, don't be courteous and don't show mercy. You must end the battle quickly and kill them all. Dongfang Haoran's expression was complicated when he said this, but he kept his eyes on Yun Yang's eyes. He said word by word, no matter who the other party is, whether they know you or not, those who attack you when your reputation is at its peak can't be good people. At the very least, they must be people with evil intentions. We humans don't need such scum. Against such people, we must kill them all and pull them up by the roots. The cleaner we kill, the better. What Yun Yang was doing now was to carry out this sentence. The four people in front of him did not expect Yun Yang to attack without a second word. What's more, it was a powerful killing blow that was filled with the intent to kill. The saber light flashed and was already in front of him in an instant. The middle-aged man in the lead relied on his cultivator's instincts and unsheathed his sword to defend himself. The moment the saber and sword collided, he was thrown back from the impact. His expression was one of shock. The moment the saber and sword clashed, he could acutely feel that although Yun Yang's saber force was powerful, his strength was not unstoppable. It was slightly different from what he knew. It seemed like Yun Yang should be stronger than this. As the thoughts flashed through his mind, the leader stole a glance at the other three people. Initially, he thought that since he had blocked the attack, the other three should have counterattacked together. However, when he saw it, he was even more shocked than before. It turned out that Yun Yang's saber had attacked four people separately. The saber light was like a whirlwind that engulfed all four of them. The four of them blocked the attack at the same time, looking shocked and having the same thought. They thought that they had blocked Yun Yang's main force and hoped that the other three would counterattack. The truth was that each of them had only borne a quarter of Yun Yang's power. All of them had fallen into the encirclement of Yun Yang's saber light. None of them looked like they were at an advantage. Yun Yang's attack came out of the blue. As the four of them parried and dodged, they could only feel a sense of fatal danger looming over them. Realizing that the other three could not help them, the moment their lives were threatened, they unleashed their true skills in unison. For a moment, the four of them unleashed their ultimate skills, each with their own style and aura. As they counterattacked together, they actually engulfed Yun Yang's saber force and even showed signs of counterattacking. Their power was indeed extraordinary. With a clear whistle, Yun Yang turned and leaped out of the circle. When he spoke, his tone was even colder. So it's you guys. The other party had reacted hastily to the sudden turn of events and had performed his strongest skill to save his own life. Yun Yang had already understood the other party's identity and background with just a glance. Even though the two leading figures had changed their appearances and even their figures were slightly different from their original forms, their true identities were immediately revealed when they attacked with all their might. They were the two second-grade Saint Lords who had sparred with Yun Yang back in the East Celestial Palace. Yun Yang, who had come to this conclusion, was inexplicably shocked, unable to calm down for a long time. Dongfang Haoran's parting words were still ringing in his ears when someone came to kill him. But why did the Saint of the Eastern Celestial Palace want to deal with him? Chapter 1353. The two men did not panic when their identities were exposed. Instead, they reverted to their original appearances and looked at Yun Yang with shining eyes that were tinged with pity. Sect leader Yun, you're a young hero. This old one admires you, but you're too much of a threat to continue living in this world. Yun Yang frowned and asked faintly, who is it that's a threat to? The one in front shook his head and said with a smile, Yun Yang, you can only blame yourself for being too outstanding. Only a dead hero is worthy of being a legend. Kill him. He hollered. Before his words echoed in the air, the four of them had already moved in unison, charging towards Yun Yang. On the other side, 2 second and 2 first-level Saint Lords sprung up at the same time. 2 in the sky and 2 on the ground, 2 in front and 2 behind, activated the power of law at the same time, sealing off all of Yun Yang's movements from all directions. Yun Yang was as still as a mountain. It was as if he did not see the power of law that had restrained him in the past. During the sparring session in the East Celestial Palace, Yun Yang's cultivation base had just taken a huge leap forward. Naturally, he had to hone all of his skills. His fist, leg, palm, movement, footwork, and sword skills had all been trained to perfection. It was also because of this reason that he had only begun to display his saber skills at the end. Even when he had revealed his saber skills, he did not use the divine edge in the beginning. As the saying went, one must always be vigilant. Although he had given his all during the sparring session in the East Celestial Palace, he was not foolish enough to use all of his trump cards. From the beginning to the end, he had only repeatedly polished the first 3 forms and 6 styles of the divine edge. He had only unleashed less than half of the divine edge's power. Therefore, the experts in the East Celestial Palace knew that Yun Yang's forte was his saber skills and that he had an exquisite set of saber skills as well as an unusually sharp, oddly shaped treasured saber with him. The combined power of the 3 was immeasurable, but they did not know that Yun Yang was merely letting them know. It was because of this that Yun Yang had unexpectedly used the first half of the 4th form of Saber Truth, Destiny Blade's 4th form, when he struck just now. The wind beyond the sky assaulted all 4 of them, surprising them and causing them to be caught off guard, thus exposing their identity. Actually, the main reason for this was due to Yun Yang's cautious personality of always leaving an extra step for himself. He did not have the intention to suspect the Eastern Celestial Palace, but he did not expect that the casual swing of his saber would force out these people's true identities and even incite the 4 of them to attack with all their might. He suddenly thought of Dongfang Haoran's serious and complicated expression when he said those words when Dongfang Haoran sent him out. Who did it threaten? Who can I threaten? Yun Yang pondered, but his hands did not stop moving. The 4 of them had joined forces to cast the power of law, so it was no small matter. Yun Yang was motivated by the divine edge and continuously sent out silver gleams. He disrupted the order of the martial skills he had displayed in the East Celestial Palace and used them to face the enemy. Occasionally, he performed the first half of the 4th form that he had just used. Although it did not succeed, it was enough to throw the 4 of them off guard. In the face of such a situation, the 4 sage monarchs felt extremely stifled. They thought that they knew Yun Yang's background very well. Although Yun Yang was strong, his various skills were already known by all of them. With the 4 of them working together, they even had the power of law that specialized in restraining him. They should have succeeded swiftly and killed him. However, the reality now was that while the power of law could restrain Yun Yang, when they used it against him, he would unleash his marvelous saber skills to protect himself. What could they do? Once the power of law passed, Yun Yang, who was freed from the restraints, would counterattack immediately, giving the 4 of them a headache. Moreover, the 4 of them knew that Yun Yang's tenacity was astonishing. Even if they were confident that they could drag him to death in a battle of attrition with him, they would inevitably fall into exhaustion in the end. When faced with someone as indomitable as Yun Yang, it was inevitable that 1 or 2 of them would be taken away by him. Therefore, the priority now was to end the battle as soon as possible. The 4 of them surrounded Yun Yang and exerted their full strength, completely suppressing Yun Yang. As the sabers and swords flashed, Yun Yang's range of movement was further squeezed, causing the space he could move to become smaller and smaller. It was as if he was constantly wandering between the shadows of the sabers and swords. Yun Yang resisted with all his might. Sweat drenched his mask and clothes, but his expression remained calm. It was obvious that he could still hold on for a while despite the immense pressure he was under. He might not be able to fight with ease, but he could still put up a stubborn resistance. Hit him hard. A second-level Saint Lord roared, "It's time." The other 3 cried out as well, changing their battle tactics once again. After fighting for such a long time, everyone once again confirmed a fact. This brat's moves were extremely exquisite, and he had the ability to fight above his level. That miraculous saber technique was even more wondrous when used in defense. Not only was it watertight, it was also flawless. He could even unleash 70% of his defensive power with 10% of his strength. Even though they were enemies now, they still couldn't help but gasp in admiration. It was simply breathtaking. After understanding this, the four of them thought that if they wanted to end the battle as soon as possible against such an opponent, the only way was to use brute force. No matter how many techniques he had, they would just smash him to death with a force that exceeded his limit. These Saint Lords were indeed knowledgeable. As they continued to disregard the consequences, each of their attacks was like a huge mountain pressing down on him, causing Yun Yang to feel even more uncomfortable and unable to continue. His body that was initially as steady as a mountain finally began to tremble and sway, staggering more and more. "Keep it up." The leading Saint Lord looked at Yun Yang with a hawk-like gaze. "Be careful of traps." Boom, 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 it was another series of powerful blows that went on for hundreds of times. Yun Yang's face under the mask was already as pale as a sheet, blood trickling down the corners of his lips. The fight between both sides had dragged the battlefield hundreds of miles away. Yun Yang tried his best to maintain it, but he could not shake off the restraints of the other party's power of law, causing his situation to become more and more difficult to sustain. The first 3 styles and 6 styles of the Divine Edge, together with the half-form of the 4th style, were marvelous. Even if the other party had figured it out, they would still not be able to break through it. However, once it was used now, the enemy would evade it immediately. The gap between the 2 strikes would inevitably lead to the combined attack of the 4 men. The continuous tug-of-war had further depleted Yun Yang's energy. Bang! The first-level Saint Lord's punch landed squarely on Yun Yang's left shoulder. Yun Yang roared and a saber wind blew, forcing the 4 men back again. However, his body was flung hundreds of feet away like a kite with a broken string. When he landed, he staggered and finally spat out a mouthful of blood. This was the first time Yun Yang had spat blood since the start of the battle. For the first time, he was at a complete disadvantage. Kill! The 4 men tore the space apart again and came to Yun Yang's side. They attacked with all their might, intending to finish the battle in one blow. From their point of view, Yun Yang was already at the end of his tether and was powerless to do anything more. Thanks to the sparring sessions in the Eastern Celestial Palace, Yun Yang's current state was close to being exhausted, even if he was not completely drained. He needed to adjust his breathing to recover. On the other hand, they only needed to put in a little more effort and they could send this newly ascended bound of Universe Supreme Cloud to the underworld, where he would perish. The pursuing saber and sword were about to reach Yun Yang. The piercing saber energy and sword energy had already torn Yun Yang's body to the point of splattering blood. The 4 men who struck the killing blow wore cruel smiles in their eyes. Yun Yang's death was right in front of them. They only needed to shatter his spiritual force into pieces later and ensure that he would not be resurrected within 10,000 years, and it would be considered a success. It was too bad that this despicable child had absorbed all the soul-quenching spring. It was impossible to completely annihilate his soul. It was at this moment, Yun Yang let out a long howl as a cold electric current exploded from his body in circles. It was at this moment that the trap that Yun Yang had laid out for half a day had finally matured and exploded. It was also at this moment that the wind blew beyond the heavens, the mountain of white bones, the gate of life and death opened, the 18 levels of hell, the door of Tao, the starry blade, the 3 styles and 6 styles were unleashed simultaneously. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds in the sky were dispersed by the saber light, leaving nothing behind. A mountain of white bones rose from the ground and a gate of hell appeared in the sky. The 18 levels of hell formed abruptly and descended from the sky. In the void, the solemn door of Tao opened abruptly. A saber danced in the galaxy, emitting a dazzling radiance that suppressed the starlight in the sky. Boundless saber lights filled the area within a radius of 10,000 feet. With a shrill cry, a first-grade Holy Lord was devoured by one of the 18 levels of hell and turned into a pile of white bones instantly, no longer breathing. As for the 2 second-grade Holy Lords who were shaken by the door of Tao, half of their bodies were sucked into the gate of Tao. Although they came to their senses immediately and unleashed their maximum power in an attempt to escape, half of their bodies were inevitably shattered into pieces. Only the parts below their waists were able to escape the technique's range of influence. However, these injuries were not enough to kill the Holy Lords. The Holy Lord's immortal strength was activated immediately. Just as the upper half of their bodies recovered, it was sliced again by the starry blade. Countless slashes from the starry blade landed on the frail bodies of the two Holy Lords that had just been formed. The series of agonizing cries was earth-shattering. After all, the 1,000 cuts were only limited to one's physical body, and the two Saint Monarchs were still recovering their bodies. Naturally, they had to endure the 1,000 cuts even more. Although they could live for a moment, it was more painful than death. Only the last first-grade Saint Monarch was slightly luckier. His movement was slightly slower. Even though his body was split into two by the starry sky blade, from his left shoulder all the way to his left hip, and half of his body flew into the gate of the Great Tau, instantly turning into flying ash, the other half of his body luckily escaped the gravitational pull and escaped. Even though all his internal organs had flowed out and were even chopped into pieces, he was the luckiest among the four. The Holy Lord's immortal strength was activated to the extreme to repair their bodies. However, the pain of having half of their bodies smashed was still unbearable. Screams were heard one after another. "I wish my brothers and sisters a good health during the Dragon Boat Festival." Chapter 1354. Yin Yang had been patient all this while, luring the four of them into his trap. While they were greedy for victory, he detonated the limit of his power, combining the essence of Saber Truth, Destiny Blade, complemented by the Divine Edge, the extracted power of deific consciousness space, and the power of endless divine art. The tables were turned in an instant, turning the tables around. As Yin Yang's saber aura grew weaker, the saber light that filled the entire space suddenly dissipated. Yin Yang's silhouette reappeared in front of the four Saint Monarchs. Facing the four Saint Monarchs who were recovering, Yin Yang did not say a word. He used the door of life and death, 18 levels of hell, and engulfed the four Saint Monarchs. He was now in complete control of the situation. The four Saint Lords were unwilling to give in, struggling bitterly. However, they were all missing limbs and could not unleash their abilities at all. Even if they put up a desperate struggle, they could not do much. They could only cry out in resentment, "Yin Yang, you're despicable." Despicable. Yin Yang had no intention of replying. He did not have the slightest interest in bickering with these four people. It was completely meaningless. His gaze was cold as he performed the fifth style of Saber Truth, Destiny Blade, over and over again. The door of life and death, 18 levels of hell. Ordinary techniques could not destroy a Saint Lord's body, but this door of hell, which was a technique that utilized the power of life, death, and death to its fullest and even triggered the aura of hell to wear them down bit by bit, was the best way to counter a Saint Lord's indestructibility. There was always a way to break it, but indestructibility was not absolute. Yin Yang's saber aura was endless, enveloping all four of them in his saber light. Every bit of their bodies recovered, he would wear them down with the saber light, causing their condition to worsen. However, due to the power of a Saint Lord, they could not be destroyed. Yin Yang was in no hurry. These four Saint Lords were all under his control. Everything was under his control. "You fellows can't recover your bodies, but I can slowly recover my energy. As time goes by, the gap between us will only grow wider. I don't believe I can't wear you fellows down completely. The legendary Saint Lord is said to be unkillable, but I'm going to use up all your cultivation base, all your energy, and all your souls today. Let's see if you fellows will die or not." The four lords saw that Yin Yang's aura did not diminish despite his incessant attacks. Instead, it was growing, showing signs of recovery. They were all cultivation experts, so how could they not know what Yin Yang was thinking? Despair filled their hearts at once. Yin Yang was too ruthless. If it was a normal battle and he was crippled or shattered, even if his body was torn into 10,000 pieces, as long as he was still in the bound of universe, he could still come into contact with the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. His true spirit wouldn't really be destroyed, and there would always be room for recovery. No matter how long it took, the broken body would eventually gather back together and recover. However, such a situation had never been encountered since ancient times. It wasn't that there weren't any great monarchs that were killed, but they were all targeted at their true spirits, annihilating their divine souls and even causing their bodies to perish. Yin Yang, on the other hand, seemed to have created a peculiar atmosphere, as if it had become a world of its own. It was a strange world filled with the chi of death of the netherworld. Every bit of their vitality was being erased. Their shattered bodies and the air of vitality that had been erased had all disappeared in this world, annihilated forever. The four lords were heartbroken. They knew the current situation very well. Whether they used the Saint Lord's chi of immortality to recover their physical bodies or not, the result would be the same. If they gave up on recovering, Yin Yang would naturally mince their bodies bit by bit and stuff them into this horrifying space, to kill them completely. On the other hand, even if they continued to recover their physical bodies, it was inevitable that Yin Yang would erase them bit by bit. When their energy was depleted, they would still be unable to escape death. No matter how they advanced or retreated, there was only death awaiting them. Despite their despair, the four lords refused to give up. They were determined to take a gamble, hoping that Yin Yang would be able to perform a skill similar to the space of death for a long period of time. After all, it was such a mystical skill, and the consumption would not be easy. If Yin Yang could not hold on any longer, they might have a chance to escape. Furthermore, this fellow did not understand the power of law. Without the space of death, he could not suppress the four of them by himself. The four Saint Lords were determined to hold on, recovering their bodies again and again, hoping that Yin Yang would be exhausted. The truth was as the four Saint Lords had predicted. Yin Yang's prolonged use of the Destiny Blade's fifth style was indeed exhausting. Gradually, he was panting and sweating profusely. His fatigue was obvious, as if he was struggling to keep up. Of course, Yin Yang's actual condition was not as bad as this. He mobilized the spiritual chi in his deific consciousness space and channeled it into his meridians. Once his mystical chi was replenished, he began to recover the endless divine art, using the power of his mystical chi to continue the process. When his mystical chi was depleted, the power of the endless divine art would be fully recovered as well. Such a cycle of depletion of the four's life force was, in fact, to maintain his condition at a relatively peak state at all times. Currently, he looked like he was about to run out of energy at any time because he was afraid that the four fellows would self-destruct out of desperation. That would be terrible. Although Yin Yang had the four of them under control and had the upper hand, he did not know the power of law after all, so it was difficult for him to lock down all of their movements. With their cultivation base, if they were determined to self-destruct, Yin Yang could not guarantee that he would not be severely injured even if he managed to avoid it. After all, they were Saint Lords, and four of them at the same time. When they were truly in despair, the extreme power they could unleash was terrifying. Yin Yang continued to put on 100% of his acting skills as he hastened his movements while panting, hoping to complete this walk on the edge of life and death as soon as possible. The feeling that Yin Yang gave off now was that he could not hold on any time and fall to the ground, never to get up again. His face grew paler and paler while the light in his eyes grew weaker as well. He was mumbling inwardly, "Are these Saint Lords so hard to kill?" He had already performed the door of life and death more than 20 times in total, which meant that he had exhausted them more than 20 times. Yet, the other party was still holding on and holding on. What the F***ck? The four Saint Lords saw that Yin Yang was gradually losing his strength and their hopes were greatly boosted. Each of them tried their best to hold on, but at the same time, they were filled with regret. They were full of confidence in this battle, thinking that they had mastered all of Yin Yang's combat tactics and had a considerable assessment of Yin Yang's ability. Never would they have thought that not only had they underestimated him, but they had underestimated him by a huge margin. The ability that this fellow had displayed in the East Celestial Palace was not even half of what he could unleash now. This was truly inconceivable. Could it be that Palace Lord Dongfang was still unable to gain this child's full trust after putting on such an act? How scheming must he be? They did not know that Yin Yang had been through too many changes in his early years. Holding back had long become an instinct. Forget Dongfang Haoran, everyone who knew Yun Yang now, including Ji Lingxi, Dong Qitian, and Shi Wuchen, no one knew the true limits of Yun Yang's ability. This had nothing to do with trust. It was merely the instinctive caution that Yun Yang had cultivated after the incident at Tianxian Cliff. Yun Yang, the abilities of the two first-grade Saint Lords were still slightly inferior. Gradually, their bodies were being worn down until they looked like phantoms. Their recovery was getting slower and slower. Even when they tried their best to activate their chi of immortality, they could only recover a shoulder after half a day, which was immediately worn down by Yun Yang's attacks. One of them cried out shrilly, "How much longer can you hold on? Do you want to perish together with us?" Yun Yang sneered, "It's not a loss for me to perish together. I'm only a half-step Saint Lord. If I can go to the netherworld with 2 second-level and 2 first-level Saint Lords, I'll be happy, won't I?" Yun Yang was out of breath even as he spoke. As he spoke, he struck with his saber with all his might. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth, and he coughed hard, almost losing his grip on the saber in his hand. Yun Yang, one of the second-level Saint Lords, was recovering even slower now. His body was gradually turning transparent. It was a sign that his spirit body had been weakened to its limit. He said loudly, "Now that both sides are suffering, it's disadvantageous to both of us. Why hurt others and hurt ourselves? As long as you stop this trick, we'll pretend that we've never met today. What do you think?" Yun Yang snorted but did not reply immediately. He seemed to be thinking, and the speed of his saber strike slowed down. Seeing that Yun Yang seemed to be wavering, the leader of the second-level Saint Lords could not help but feel invigorated. He said, "The few of us have fallen today. Yun Yang, whatever conditions you have, just state them. Today's matter ends here. If we go back, we won't be able to recover for at least 3,000 years. We won't be able to pose a threat to you anymore. Why must both sides suffer and fight to the death?" Yun Yang spat out a mouthful of blood. Coughing, he asked sternly, "You came to kill me for no reason. Now that it's impossible and you're on the brink of death, you want to leave just like that? How can there be such an easy thing in this world?" The leader said, "What do you want? Hand over all your interspatial storage." Yun Yang continued to swing his saber, but he said loudly, "In addition, you have to swear to heaven that you'll never be my enemy in this life." Hearing this, the 4 of them stopped talking and began to recover their physical bodies. They were Saint Lords after all. If they were threatened like this, where would their dignity be? What's more, they had to swear to heaven. "Look at you, who are you trying to scare when you're on the verge of collapsing and can't hold on any time?" After another quarter of an hour, Yun Yang still looked like he was on the verge of collapse. He seemed to be growing weaker, but the power of the door of life and death, 18 levels of hell, was still as sharp as ever. At this moment, even the figures of the 2 second-grade Saint Monarchs had already become illusory and unreal. They were almost unable to hold on any longer. In such a situation, their bodies were already close to being unable to recover, and they could no longer continue. At this moment, one of them shouted, "That's it. Hand over what I want first. Seeing is believing." Yun Yang shouted sternly. The 4 of them dared not hesitate any longer. 4 spatial rings were tossed out at once, landing at Yun Yang's feet. "There's more." Yun Yang was relentless. The 4 of them almost spat blood. There was more. With their wealth as Saint Lords, they naturally had more than enough. It was common for them to bring a few more spatial rings as a backup when they were out and about, especially when they were out. Now that things had come to this, they had no choice but to hand over another one each. "There's more." Yun Yang shouted. "There's no more. T. I don't believe that people like you will lie a second time after telling the first time." Yun Yang seemed to be filled with righteous indignation as he attacked furiously, obliterating the shoulders and heads of the Saint Lords that had just recovered. This time, it took the 4 Saint Lords a full quarter of an hour to recover from the ordeal. "Here. There's really only these. Another 2 spatial rings fell to the ground. There's more? I knew I couldn't trust you lot. Yin Yang yelled, what else? Hand them all over. There's really no more this time. The 4 Saint Lords almost spat blood. I don't believe it. There's really no more this time. I swear there's no more. Swear then. I'm listening. Yin Yang seemed to have made up his mind and did not believe a single word. Then, another spatial bangle fell to the ground. There's more. Then maybe there's more. There's really no more this time, swear then. Helpless, the 4 lords were forced to swear a heavenly oath that they did not have any more spatial items on them. Yin Yang only stopped when he said sternly, all of you have to swear again that you will never be my enemy. As he spoke, he spat a mouthful of blood on the ground. Otherwise, I'll burn my life force to kill all of you. The 4 Saint Lords glared at Yin Yang, but they could only swear that they would never be Yin Yang's enemy for the rest of their lives. It was only then that Yin Yang was finally relieved. He let out a long laugh, ha 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 ha, with a flash of his body, Zhuoran stood on the ground. From a person who was on the verge of death, he suddenly became as vigorous as a dragon and ferocious as a tiger. A monstrous aura surged out. Since there's nothing left, then all of you can go to hell. The saber light flashed, splitting the souls of the 2 second-level Saint Lords into 2 halves. You're not hurt? The few lords were overwhelmed with grief and indignation. They had never thought that Yin Yang would actually do such a thing, nor did they think that Yin Yang's previous state was all an act. Yin Yang snorted coldly and struck with his saber. How could the 4 great monarchs not know that they had been tricked? They attacked with all their might. We'll fight it out with you. You liar. But the moment they counterattacked, 4 purple lightning pillars swiftly formed in the clear sky. Then, with a series of rumbling sounds, they struck the 4 soul bodies at the same time. Boom! The souls of the 4 great monarchs, which were already abnormally weak, immediately vanished into thin air. They had sworn an oath to heaven and had been witnessed by heaven's will to not be Yin Yang's enemy. Now that they had made a move, they would naturally be punished by heaven's wrath. Their souls would be smashed into pieces by heaven's tribulation thunder and they would be deader than dead. In the next moment, Emmy appeared. A vine forcefully searched the void 3,000 feet around them, collecting all the overflowing spiritual energy of the 4 lords back into the deific consciousness space. For a moment, extremely dense karma energy rushed into the divine sense space. Elte desperately wanted to be fast, but still stumbled until now. Sigh. Chapter 1355. As Yin Yang sensed it, he was shocked. The karmic energy he had generated from killing these 4 people was equivalent to killing tens of thousands of demons. The surging karmic energy almost dumbfounded Yin Yang. How can there be so much? The karmic energy had been pouring in continuously during this period of time, until today, his deific consciousness space was almost full. But the karmic energy from the demon clan was still flowing in intermittently. It was obvious that Yin Yang's plan was still working, or that the feline emperor had begun his revenge. The feline emperor was rescued by Yin Yang. Without Yin Yang, the feline emperor might not have the chance to come out again in this lifetime. Therefore, the karmic energy formed by the feline emperor was also counted as Yin Yang's, but it was a direct and indirect difference. I've gotten a large amount of karmic energy today. There's at most 10,000 karmic energy left before the 7th level is full. Yin Yang heaved a sigh of relief. Soon. By now, Yin Yang was really not anxious at all. One must know that the 7th level of the endless divine art required 10 million karma energy. Yin Yang was already very satisfied to be able to rush to the point where it was almost full in such a short time. What he needed to worry about was the 8th level. What about the 8th floor that was even higher? The first level of endless divine art only required 10, the second 100, the third 1,000, the fourth 10,000, the fifth 100,000, the sixth 1,000,000, the 7th 10 million. If he continued to calculate, the 8th level would require at least 100 million karmic energy. That was a real 100 million. And the highest level, the 9th level, it would require at least 1 billion karmic energy. Thinking of this, Yun Yang could not help but worry. That seemed a little too difficult. He quickly picked up the spatial ring on the ground and glanced at the messy ground before turning to leave without a second thought. As for why these 4 lords wanted to kill him, Yun Yang was not in the mood to guess. He was even more disdainful to ask. What would come would eventually come. He only knew that these 4 people were not sent by Dongfang Haoran. As for who he had threatened, why did he threaten that person? Yin Yang had no interest at all. Soldiers come with arms, water comes with earth. Come if you want to kill me. I'm lacking karmic energy. The holy land of Tian Fa was right in front of him. Yin Yang did not change his mind and flew in. Not long after, Yin Yang stepped into the holy land of Tian Fa again. His second visit should have been a walk in the park, but the moment Yin Yang stepped into Tian Fa's territory, he felt that the atmosphere was completely different from before. The source of the biggest difference was the strong aura that Yin Yang had sensed in the sky above the holy land of Tian Fa not long after he entered. As Yin Yang persevered and ventured deeper into the holy land of Tian Fa, the aura grew heavier and heavier, gradually exceeding the limit of what Yin Yang could withstand. This fact was a little shocking. One must know that Yin Yang's current cultivation base was not ordinary. In terms of pure combat power, it was more than a level higher than a second-grade Saint Monarch. It was almost equivalent to a third-grade Saint Monarch's top-notch combat power. But the experts from Tian Fa Holy Land could actually suppress Yin Yang completely with just their auras, to the point that he could not continue. How could it not be terrifying and appalling? We're friends. Yin Yang gradually felt his strength slipping away. With a quick thought, he shouted, I am Yin Yang, not a member of the demonic race. As he spoke, he couldn't help but rub his fox head. This head was really a troublemaker. Just as Yin Yang uttered these 2 words, the unstoppable pressure suddenly eased and disappeared without a trace. A moment later, a loud laughter rang out. So it's Leader Yun, we're friends indeed. Immediately after, a long howl shook the sky, and the entire holy land of Tian Fa suddenly fell into a solemn silence. However, Yin Yang could still vaguely hear a large group of mystical beasts moving at high speed, but their movements were unusually meticulous. Yin Yang waited patiently, observing the changes in silence. After a while, a clear path suddenly appeared in front of Yin Yang. On both sides of the path, countless mystical beasts lined up neatly, watching Yin Yang walk into the depths of the Holy Land. The mystical beasts that lined up ranged from the outermost low-level mystical beasts to the mid-level mystical beasts that went deeper into the Holy Land, and then the high-level mystical beasts. Wherever Yin Yang passed, the mystical beasts that stood silently sent him off. The atmosphere was solemn and solemn. Many mystical beasts that could not make it to the front in time also lined up quietly behind the first row of mystical beasts, layer by layer, row by row, watching Yin Yang like the mystical beasts in front of him, their gazes equally friendly. Just by Yin Yang's path alone, the number of mystical beasts that lined up to wait for him was no less than 10 million. Yin Yang still did not know that this was the highest form of etiquette that Tian Fa Holy Land had for foreign guests, a welcome from all beasts. After a long while, Yin Yang finally arrived at the center of the sacred land under the welcoming gazes of tens of thousands of beasts. He was greeted by the sight of the Bear King, Crane King, Monkey King, and the rest of the Beast Kings who had fought alongside him previously. They stood neatly in a row, gazing at Yin Yang with fervent gazes. Brother Yun. The Bear King's voice was the loudest. Why are you still covering your face when you're already here? Why are you covering your face when you're here? Take it off, take it off. Yin Yang chuckled humorlessly. I really can't take it off, what's wrong? Is your face hurt? The Crane King said that your looks are outstanding among the human race, but I didn't expect you to be as fond of beauty as he is. The Monkey King was surprised. It's nothing, it's nothing. let us think of something together. The Crane King has studied the art of maintaining one's face before. As he spoke, he suddenly tore off Yin Yang's mask. It was too sudden and unexpected. Yin Yang did not expect the Monkey King to do something like this and move so quickly. In addition to the fact that he had long let down his guard against the Beast Kings, his mask was naturally pulled off. The moment the mask fell, all the Beast Kings looked as if they had been struck by lightning. They stared at Yin Yang's fox head dumbfoundedly, their mouths agape and tongue-tied. They were speechless for a long time. Then, after a moment of silence, it was followed by a burst of laughter that caused the entire hall to roar with laughter. Ha 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 ha. The Bear King hugged his stomach, tears rolling down his cheeks as he laughed. This. Brother Yun, your new look is too unique. The other Beast Kings were laughing so hard that their eyes could not be seen. Their stomachs were hurting and they were about to pass out from exhaustion. Among the humans, demons, and beasts, the mystical beasts were the ones who paid the most attention to their hearts and not their faces. After confirming Yin Yang's aura, they no longer had any doubts about his identity. Therefore, there was only shock and delight at the moment, but none of the beasts would question Yin Yang's identity. Even though Yin Yang now looked like a completely different person compared to the handsome and high-spirited human gigolo that he had once been, it was as if he was a completely different person. He knew that this would happen. Yin Yang's fox face darkened as he looked at the group of Beast Kings who were equally unscrupulous and gloating at his misfortune. His eyes were filled with helplessness. It's a pity about that pretty face. That's the outstanding side that the Crane King always talks about. The group of Beast Kings sighed hypocritically for a while before bursting into even louder laughter. Stop fooling around. Quickly invite sect leader Yun in. At this moment, a gentle voice came from inside. A dozen elders appeared at the other end of the room. Their gazes that looked at Yin Yang were filled with warmth and indescribable gratitude. These must be the seniors from the sacred land. Yin Yang pays his respects to all of you. Yin Yang bowed respectfully. There was nothing wrong with Yin Yang's well-behaved gait. At the very least, it conformed to the norm and no one could find any fault with it. However, his movement, coupled with his fox head, was awkward and comical no matter how one looked at it. The Beast Kings who had just managed to suppress their laughter overflowed once more, bursting into laughter once more. The eyes of the few old men became more and more gentle. One of them laughed and said, "Boss has been waiting for Sect Master Yun in the room. We have also been looking forward to seeing the young hero who saved the Tian Fa Holy Land. Today, we have finally seen him. He is indeed extraordinary, 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 extraordinary." To these elders, whether Yin Yang had a fox head or a human head, it made no difference. In fact, he looked more pleasing to their eyes if he had a fox head. After all, it was their first encounter with Yin Yang. Although they had all transformed into their human forms to speak, in the eyes of the mystical beasts, their original forms were still more pleasing to the eyes of the mystical beasts. The human form was the oddity, an existence like the Crane King, who was obsessed with pursuing so-called beautiful things, was the oddity of the oddities among the mystical beasts. It could not be generalized to the other mystical beasts. Thank you seniors for welcoming me personally. Yin Yang is honored and flattered. Yin Yang excused himself and entered the room with quick steps. The extreme speed of his movement exposed Yin Yang's current thoughts. Leaving this place where he was being laughed at was the right thing to do. Your father was toyed with by the demon race and laughed at by the humans. Now that I'm in the sacred land of Tian Fa, I'm being laughed at by the mystical beasts. What kind of life is this? If this goes on, your father can't live anymore. Waiting for Yin Yang in the room was a middle-aged man in a white robe. He was handsome and his gaze was warm. Just as Yin Yang entered, the white-robed man stood up and bowed respectfully, saying, "Thank you, Sect Leader Yun, for lending a hand previously. This old and useless one greets you." Yin Yang was shocked to see this. The white-robed man's aura was immeasurably strong. Based on Yin Yang's experience, there were only a handful of people who could be on par with him. He had to be the highest leader in the sacred land of Tian Fa, a pinnacle expert of this world. Yin Yang quickly avoided the man and took a step forward, saying, "Senior, why are you being so courteous? The sacred land of Tian Fa has protected the human bound of universe for countless years. It should be the human race's great benefactor. I, Yin Yang, have only done a little bit of my service previously. It's not worth mentioning. How can I be praised so highly by Senior? I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it." The white-robed man smiled. "Sect leader Yun, you're too humble. It's completely deserving of it." He straightened himself and gestured for Yun Yang to take a seat, calling out, "Serve tea. This old and useless one is the current helmsman of the sacred land of Tian Fa. My true form is a golden python." The elder smiled faintly. "People call this old and useless one Python 9. This old and useless one likes this name very much. Python 9. Yin Yang was inexplicably shaken. He did not expect this helmsman of Tian Fa to be so frank and tell him about his true form. He really did not treat Yin Yang as an outsider. Speaking of the previous incident, it was mainly because of this old and useless one's carelessness. I've gotten used to it and took it for granted. It was too dangerous. Python 9 sighed and did not speak of the matter anymore. He smiled and said, "I'm afraid sect leader Yun will feel uncomfortable saying it again and again. Let's not talk about it then." Yin Yang heaved a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Senior is wise." Just like what Python 9 had said, Yin Yang would never feel comfortable talking about Yun Yang's help. As the saying went, a debt of gratitude for a pound of rice, a debt of enmity for a pound of rice. Such a huge helping hand, and the one being helped was the pinnacle of this world. Whether it was Yin Yang or the elder in front of him, they would definitely feel uncomfortable. Let's not talk about the past and talk about the present. I know that sect leader Yun was ambushed not long ago. Python 9 said faintly. At this time, Crane King, the self-proclaimed most handsome man among the mystical beasts, came in with the tea and left immediately after setting it down. The fragrance of the tea lingered in the air as Yun Yang's face was hidden behind the rising steam. Senior's eyes are like a torch. It is indeed so. Then do you know the reason behind this? Python 9 took a sip of tea and said, "I can only tell you that what you've encountered today is only the beginning. From today onwards, there will be countless saints who will target you and try their best to kill you. Of course, there will be those with ulterior motives, those who are insane, and even those who have forgotten the seeds in their sleeves. Yet, there will be no lack of heroic experts who have fought for humanity their entire lives. Do you know why this is so?" Yin Yang raised his head abruptly and asked in surprise, "Why?" "Please enlighten me, Senior." Python 9 said calmly, "Dongfang Haoran has pushed you to such a high position. This is a brilliant move that is significant and far-reaching, but it is extremely dangerous to speak ill of you personally. You were originally the leader of a newly established sect in the residence of 9 Supremes, so how could you enter the eyes of the bound of universe's higher-ups? You had plenty of time to slowly develop, and you could have made a name for yourself at the right time. But now, you've entered the eyes of the higher-ups at least 2 years in advance, and you've even become the hottest legend in the entire continent. These 2 years in advance should have been a buffer period for you to hide your strength and gather your foundation. To you, it's a rare and crucial period of time, but you don't have it now. You've entered the eyes of everyone in the continent, and it's hard for you to escape. What's more, after you've been sealed and solidified by the demonic race's heaven-sealing formation, you can only bear the distinct image of a fox, constantly facing all kinds of attacks. You can't avoid it, and you can't change it. For a long time to come, not only will the demonic race want you dead, there are too many humans who want to send you to the underworld as well. In other words, you, who seem to have gained the respect of the entire continent, have actually fallen into a terrible situation where you're the enemy of the entire world and every living being wants to kill you." Python 9 sighed softly. "Do you know why this is so?" "Yes, Why is this so? Yin Yang asked in bewilderment. It was finally a little earlier today. Hopefully, it would be even earlier tomorrow. Chapter 1356. I think Dongfang Haran must be filled with regret right now. Song Jiu chuckled. Python 9 chuckled. This fellow has always done things according to his whims and needs to adapt to the circumstances. However, he never imagined that he would do something that would put you in such a passive position. Yin Yang thought about it and said, No, Palace Lord Dongfang would never harm me. His plan should have been well prepared. He was certain of this. Of course he wouldn't harm you. In fact, he would have done everything he could to help you, but there's a limit to a man's strength. Even a top expert like him can't hide the truth from the masses. Yin Yang asked with a frown, Senior, please speak frankly. What is the reason? He said doubtfully, the ones who came to kill me were actually from the East Celestial Palace, and they were even people who were familiar with me. This has already made me extremely puzzled. Also, they said that I blocked someone's path. It's even more baffling. Song Jiu laughed. Sect leader Yun, you're young and talented, smart and wise, but you're still lacking in experience and a certain level of worldly wisdom. You actually don't know your own existence. Have you really blocked someone's path? Yin Yang thought about it and asked cautiously, May I ask, Senior, whose path have I blocked? Song Jiu was silent for a moment before he sealed the entire room with his mental energy. Yin Yang was moved. This should be the safest place in Tian Fa, yet he still had to set up a seal. What was Song Jiu trying to say? For a moment, the atmosphere in the room was unprecedentedly heavy. Amidst the heavy atmosphere, Song Jiu asked softly, Do you know, the Supreme Heaven Pavilion? The Supreme Heaven Pavilion? Yin Yang was a little confused. What kind of place is that? This junior has never heard of it. Aren't the top forces in the bound of universe the three heavenly palaces? Song Jiu smiled faintly. The top forces in this world are naturally led by the three heavenly palaces, but the Supreme Heaven Pavilion has a different meaning of existence. Just now, I mentioned that the reason why you are being targeted is because you are blocking the path of others. By blocking the path, it means that you are blocking the path of others to the Supreme Heaven Pavilion. Therefore, even though you are a hero of the human clan in the Black-Yellow continent, and it is not taboo to target you, there are still many people who want to take this risk. That's because what you're affecting isn't the interests of a single person, but the future of a large group of people. I'd like to hear the details, Yin Yang requested respectfully. The Supreme Heavenly Pavilion is an extremely mysterious place. Even though they don't have any representatives in name, the top-notch powerhouses of the entire Xianhuang world are all chosen by the Supreme Heavenly Pavilion. There is no doubt that the Supreme Heaven Pavilion is the best in the bound of universe. The Supreme Heavenly Pavilion selects on behalf of the heavens, bestows the authority of the heavens. Yin Yang listened quietly, digesting the sudden, earth-shattering information bit by bit. The sudden appearance of the Supreme Heaven Pavilion baffled Yin Yang, and he was even a little perplexed. He didn't interrupt and just listened attentively, occasionally refilling the tea. Only cultivators who have reached a certain level of reputation and ability are qualified to enter the Supreme Heaven Pavilion. As long as they can enter the first level of the Supreme Heaven Pavilion and stay there for 2 hours, they'll have the chance to receive a gift that's beyond their expectations. This is also the basic qualification to become the Hall Masters of the three heavenly palaces. For example, the head of the Sacred Heart Palace. Yin Yang's eyes widened, his disbelief growing. There's such a thing? Whether it's the three heavenly palaces' lords or the hall masters of the halls under them, they're all in the hands of the Supreme Heaven Pavilion. In fact, the current hall masters have all received the Supreme Heaven Pavilion's approval before they were able to assume their current positions. There is no objection to the Supreme Heaven Pavilion's vetting authority. No force, no person, no living being is allowed to interfere. Meng Jiu glanced at Yin Yang and took a sip of tea before he continued speaking slowly. Yin Yang's mind raced as he vaguely thought of something, but he was more confused than anything else. The Supreme Heaven Pavilion only opens once every 10,000 years. If someone passes the screening, the Supreme Heaven Pavilion will immediately appoint them, and the previous Hall Master will be relieved of his position. Huh? Relieved of his position? How important is the Hall Master's authority? Has there ever been anyone who was reluctant to let go of the authority? Yin Yang's speculation gradually formed in his heart as he probed the crux of the matter. No one has dared to violate this rule in the past hundreds of thousands of years. The Supreme Heaven Pavilion's screening appointment is approved by Heaven's will. It can't be violated. Once it is violated, one will have to bear the heavenly punishment. Life and power, the pros and cons are determined. Appointment? Yin Yang asked again, pointing to another keyword. That's right. It's an appointment. The Supreme Heaven Pavilion selection appointment is equivalent to Heaven appointing you to a certain position. Meng Jiao said, the appointment is announced to the world right from the start and is approved by Heaven's will. Yin Yang's doubt grew as he pressed on. Since there's a first level, there must be a higher level. What's the difference? Cultivators who can go to the second level are qualified to become the masters of the 3 heavenly palaces and the master of Tian Fa Holy Land. Of course, the screening process is extremely difficult. If you enter and are not recognized, you will be expelled. Moreover, as long as you are expelled, you will not be able to enter again in this life. If you force yourself to do so, you will be obliterated and killed. You will die and be consigned to eternal damnation. Senior has mentioned qualifications again and again. Does this mean that there's more than one person who has this qualification, or that more than one person has the right to be screened? Yin Yang's mind was nimble as he gradually identified the key point that he was being targeted. Yes, the 3 heavenly palaces have a few candidates waiting for the selection that happens once every 10,000 years. Either they inherit the heavenly palaces, or they ascend to the unprecedented 3rd level. As for you, with your current reputation and meritorious deeds, not only are you qualified to compete for the 2nd or 3rd trial, but you are also qualified to compete for the 2nd or 3rd trial. Moreover, with the positive impact you have on the Black-Yellow continent, as long as your cultivation base reaches a certain level, you will have a great chance of being acknowledged by the Supreme Heavenly Pavilion. Once the Supreme Heaven Pavilion's acknowledgement and the appointment is announced to the world, you might become the master of the East Celestial Palace, or the master of the West Celestial Palace. It's a great thing to be blessed with great providence. Do you understand? After the appointment is confirmed, if someone else were to target you or attack you directly, it would be a loss of providence if it's light and death if it's severe. If it's someone from the same place as you, the damage would be even more severe. Once the successor of the palace is killed by the palace's people, the entire palace will be annihilated. Yin Yang's gaze grew more solemn. That means, every single one of the 3 heavenly palaces candidates who are being groomed will want to kill you. And their supporters will want to kill you for this reason, to get rid of a threat like you. The threat you pose is too great. You're certain to be able to take down one of them, so naturally, you'll be everyone's target. Furthermore, those who come to kill you might not have been ordered, but they're acting on their own accord. If you think about it carefully, you'll understand the reason. If I were those people's followers, I'd kill you as well. Now, it looks like the probability of you taking over the East Celestial Palace is the highest, but it's not impossible for you to take over the West Celestial Palace or even the Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace. You are a free man, so you can join any sky palace you want. If you replace the candidate they're following, wouldn't it mean that their 10,000 years of effort would be wasted in an instant? It'd be meaningless. Meng Jiao chuckled bitterly. Speaking of which, even if you were to take over the Holy Land of Tian Fa, it wouldn't be too unexpected to me. In fact, it'd be reasonable and expected. That's why I've asked them before you came. He pondered for a moment before continuing. I asked them if they would have any thoughts if Yin Yang were to take over the Holy Land of Tian Fa. And the answer they gave me was, acceptable. But from what I can see, they're actually looking forward to you taking over the Holy Land of Tian Fa. I don't know what to say. For some reason, Yin-yang felt a surge of warmth that coursed through his entire body. This is the reason. It's a very simple reason. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fate. Meng Jiao smiled and sighed softly. Where there are people, there's a martial world. Even if it's under the premise of the survival of the entire human race, such a situation of fighting for power and profit is still unavoidable. It's bound to happen. Yin-yang was silent for a moment before he said, it's fate indeed, the unpredictable martial world. However, it's also this kind of fighting for power and profit that drives the continuous improvement of mankind. Although I feel pressured, I can still understand it. He smiled faintly. It's just that after considering our standpoint, once we meet face to face, we still have to kill those who should be killed. Understanding is one thing, and being hostile is another. Meng Jiao chortled. Good. These words are really well said. Yin-yang smiled gently and said, the martial world's path is a path of life and death. No matter what the reason is, as long as one comes to fight to the death, it's still a matter of the martial world in the end. There's nothing unacceptable or incomprehensible about it. Those who live in the end are the victors and the righteous, those who die are nothing. The winner takes all, and the loser is nothing. Meng Jiao nodded. That's right, that's right. Yin-yang suddenly chuckled and said, listening to Senior's words, Yin-yang's heart is suddenly enlightened. No wonder I often feel that, the higher the level of the leaders I've come into contact with, basically all of them are a little, Yin-yang chuckled, too embarrassed to continue. Meng Jiao guffawed. They're all a little jumpy and eccentric. All of them feel that their reputations aren't as good as meeting them in person. Isn't that right? Yin-yang chuckled sheepishly. These are the chosen ones. Meng Jiao guffawed. They've never been elected because they're experienced and sophisticated, nor because they're proficient in the sex affairs, nor because they're good at socializing. It's only because God thinks that they can lead their respective forces to a brighter future. So, these are the chosen ones. Ever since the bound of universe was created, the chosen ones have never been wrong. That's why there are the 3 celestial palaces that shake the world today. I see. So this is the truth. A mocking smile hung on Yin-yang's face as he murmured, so, it's me who's blocking the path of those, so-called chosen ones. I have something to say, but it's a pity that they won't believe me. Meng Jiao said excitedly, may I ask what truth it is? This old and useless one would like to hear it. Yin-yang's eyes glinted with a sharp glint as he said faintly, I wouldn't dare to claim that it's a wise opinion, but it's just an opinion that comes from the bottom of my heart. I just want to say. I've never thought much of the position of a mere leader of a celestial palace. Yin-yang's words were spoken in a straightforward manner, but the arrogance in his bones was undeniable. Meng Jiao was not offended at all. Instead, he agreed and said, that's right. With your age, your cultivation base, your advancement in ability, and your achievements, it's reasonable that you don't think much of a mere celestial palace. I believe that Dongfang Haoran's expectations for you aren't just limited to inheriting a celestial palace. He probably hopes that you can step into the 3rd level of Supreme Heaven Pavilion that no one has ever stepped foot into since the beginning of time in the bound of universe. Yin-yang's heart skipped a beat. Was Dongfang Haoran so optimistic about his future? Recalling the bits and pieces of his interactions with Dongfang Haoran in the East Celestial Palace, Yin-yang immediately felt that his words were true. Dongfang Haoran might very well have thought so. The series of actions that followed were done in the same manner for the advancement of his cultivation base. It was a subtle feeling that he would not hesitate to tear down the East Celestial Palace as long as he needed it. In fact, Dongfang Haoran had explained about how much he valued you, but other than the 3 of us, no one else would believe him. After all, the position of the Celestial Palace's leader is already the limit of their imagination. Meng Jiao smiled. Actually, it's not just the others. Even among the 3 of us, there might be some who have doubts. Yin-yang chuckled. Seniors, you think too highly of me. Mang Jiao smiled. That's how it should be. Everything is what you deserve. Back then, Dongfang Haoran was in charge of treating you and helping you advance. He even disregarded his subordinates' attempts to stop him and allowed you to fight many experts from the East Celestial Palace. Other than allowing your cultivation base to advance, he might have also wanted you to familiarize yourself with those people. As for me, I've never shown myself. I've only waited here for you. I'm here to answer your doubts. I can answer all your doubts. Yin Yang nodded slowly. Those whose cultivation base has reached our level are used to imagining the worst possible scenario. It's a good thing that you can be merciless to the demon race, but what will you do when you're facing these scum of the human race? Will you be restrained? Other than targeting you, they've always fought for the human race. It's an understatement to say that their achievements are glorious. Any one of them has worked hard and made great contributions. If you're hesitant because of this and can't kill them, it's inevitable that they'll take advantage of you. It's strange. I've only logged off when I saw the update with my own eyes last night, but it hasn't been updated yet. This has happened 7 to 8 times this year. It's never happened before, so it would only repeat itself. Now, it's so strange. There's more in the afternoon. GT. Chapter 1357. Mang Nine chuckled. It looks like we've been worrying too much. You're very open-minded, far beyond your age and experience. Yin Yang smiled reservedly. Don't worry, senior. Yin Yang is confident that he can distinguish the severity of this matter. After all, no one wants to die in vain. It's only a living creature's instinct to seek immortality after death. Mang Nine heaved a sigh of relief and said, It's good that you understand this. You've come out of the East Celestial Palace and the Holy Land of Tian Fa. From now on, there will be endless bloodshed. It's a pity that all of this belongs to you. You can't avoid it, you can only rely on yourself. You've done Tian Fa a great favor, but we can't help you much. I'm truly ashamed. Yin Yang said, As long as Senior can remove this fox head of mine and return me to my original appearance, it'll be a great help to me. I'm eternally grateful and have no intention of asking for more. Mang Nine choked and chuckled bitterly after a long while. Everything else is fine, there's always room for discussion. This is the only thing, this old and useless one can't help you with. Yin Yang was stunned and stuttered, Why is that? With Senior's cultivation base and ability, you can't do this? Python 9 coughed with a look of embarrassment on his face. After a long while, he finally said, After the few of us found out about this unforeseen event of yours, we had a special discussion. Cough cough. Everyone believes that your current fox head is an opportunity for you. Yin Yang's head was spinning. This fox head of mine is my opportunity? Does that mean that it's not removed on purpose? Mang Nine's face was flushed as he said, You can't blame me for this. Dongfang Haoran insisted on it. He insisted repeatedly, that your fox face can increase your martial world experience by a lot, opportunity, and it can also allow your ability to improve by leaps and bounds in the shortest time possible. Cough. As he spoke, Mang Nine met Yin Yang's gaze and betrayed Dongfang Haoran decisively. Yin Yang's feelings at this moment were indescribable. It was simply too much. He felt his blood rush to his head the moment he knew the truth. For a moment, his head buzzed uncontrollably. There was only one thought in his mind, I want to go back. I'm going to return to the Eastern Celestial Palace, catch that shameless old fart, and beat him to death. Now that I've achieved success and recognition, the most important thing I should do is to return home in glory, understand? And this was only the most insignificant point. Most importantly, and at the same time, the most crucial thing, is that my 2 fiancés have both found their whereabouts. I should go look for them as soon as possible and meet them again. Then, we will be a perfect match for each other. Yet, at this critical juncture, You old bastards colluded with each other to prevent me, the continent's hero, from recovering my original appearance. What was his motive? What kind of bad taste do you have? What increase in experience? It was clearly a **T statement from a level 8 scoundrel. I've never seen people as shameless as you lot. Yin Yang spat the words out through his clenched teeth. He could only feel his head spinning. Python 9 laughed dryly as he nodded his head. He thought to himself, are you scolding me with those words? He nodded in agreement. Dongfang Haoran is indeed not very good. Yin Yang rolled his eyes as he looked at the Lord of Divine Punishment, feeling a wave of annoyance wash over him. How could you have the nerve to say such a thing? When he heard Meng Jiao talk about Dongfang Haoran and the other seniors, who were the pinnacle figures of the bound of universe, planning everything so meticulously and painstakingly for his growth, Yin Yang's heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. Even when he knew that he would be the world's enemy when he went out and would have to fight at all times, he did not feel anything bad about it. His heart was already brimming with gratitude as he thought to himself, if I can achieve something in the future, I will definitely repay Dongfang Haoran and the others heavily. However, the situation had taken a turn for the worse in just a few words. His mentality had been turned upside down. Suddenly, the bad taste of these old fellows was exposed in front of him. Yin Yang was so angry that his liver was swelling and his lungs were bulging. It was a sudden outburst. Clutching his chest, he panted with difficulty. My liver, my lungs. I'm so angry. I feel like I'm going to explode. Python 9 coughed and tried to console Yun Che. Little brother Yun, there's no need to take it to heart. As the saying goes, don't bother about trifles when it comes to accomplishing great things. To us cultivators, one's appearance is nothing more than a trivial matter. As long as one's heart remains the same, one's appearance is nothing more than a trivial matter. It's not difficult for one to change one's appearance. A man of character should be able to look past it. Yin Yang asked in grief and indignation, Senior Python 9, may I ask if you have a wife? Python 9 coughed. Cough. Well, sometimes, cough. Cough. Yin Yang pointed at his chest and said tearfully, I'm still single. Do you understand? Python 9 only continued coughing. Cough, cough, cough. This was a difficult topic to answer. Yin Yang said in grief and indignation, ever since I ascended, I've been separated from my fiancé. A few months ago, I finally found out about their exact whereabouts. I'm only waiting for them, we haven't seen each other for years. Do you know the pain of lovesickness? But now, I'm going to see her with such a head. Think about it, if you were my fiancé, would you accept it? What kind of reaction would you have? Is this a trifling matter? It can't be. Yin Yang asked. Cough, cough, cough. Python 9 coughed, unable to utter a word for a long while. As an experienced senior who had lived for a long time, it could be said that he had seen through all forms of life. It was obvious whether Yin Yang would accept her or not. As far as his fiancée was concerned, it was another matter whether she admitted that Yin Yang was a fox or not. If it was an old couple, perhaps there would still be room for an explanation. But, as a young man and woman who had yet to be married, especially a young man and woman who had yet to make any substantial progress, this was simply a deadly weapon to separate a pair of lovers. At least, in Python 9's opinion, even if the girl knew that the fox head was Yin Yang, she would never be intimate with him. Yin Yang begged, Senior Python 9, why don't we take a step back? You help me unseal it secretly and I'll cover it up in front of others. I'll still be a fox. Isn't this the best of both worlds? Python 9 wore a smile that was uglier than a crying face. Dongfang Haoran was afraid that I'd secretly help you because of the holy land of Tian Fa. He forced me to swear a heavenly oath. I'm regretting it now, but I can't do anything about it. Yin Yang was stunned. Stunned. After a long time, Yin Yang stood up abruptly and cursed, pointing at the sky, Dongfang Haoran, CKU. A torrent of curses reverberated in the sky above the holy land of Tian Fa. The faces of all the beast kings outside turned ashen. This was way too explosive, right? To scold 18 generations of the Lord of the Eastern Celestial Palace's ancestors right in our holy land, with no one spared. What kind of deep hatred is this? Yunyang cursed for an hour in agitation, not repeating a single word. The beast kings were in awe of him. The human language was broad and profound. Just this foreign language alone was already very promising. It looked like the thousands of years of hard work we've put in is still not enough. At least, compared to this sect leader Yun, our ability to use language is still too lacking. Python 9, who felt that he had become an accomplice, sealed off his 6 senses. Sigh, why don't I feel good listening to him scolding Dongfang Haoran? Right. I have to leave a recording Jade. When I see Dongfang Haoran in the future, I have to give it to him for him to appreciate. How can a person who has done such a wicked thing not taste it for himself? After a long while, Yunyang, who was done with his cursing, was out of ideas. She looked into the mirror and saw the handsome little fox's face in it. She wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Who can understand the helplessness and sorrow in my heart? The main purpose of coming to the holy land of Tian Fa was destined to fail, so Yunyang lost the interest to stay here. Since senior has difficulties, this junior shall not disturb you any further. I shall take my leave now. When he said this, he sounded a little weak. Python 9 coughed and said, I'll send you off. After that, the Saint Monarchs from the Tian Fa Holy Land each gave Yunyang a huge gift. Dozens of spatial rings were filled with treasures of heaven and earth, as well as all sorts of rare metals and metals. This was undoubtedly an astronomical amount of wealth. However, Yunyang could not feel the slightest bit excited. It was just a little bit of wealth, he no longer cared about it. He was already the richest in the world, so what if he added a little more? Seniors, there's no need to be so courteous. The future is long, we shall meet again. Yunyang kept the 14 spatial rings. This old man will personally escort you out of this wasteland. Python 9 stood up. For not being able to help Yunyang, Python 9 felt inexplicably apologetic. I dare not trouble senior. If it goes against senior's vow, wouldn't it be Yunyang's mistake? You can use it, you can use it. Python 9's gaze was worried. The most dangerous moment for you will be during this 40,000 miles journey. There are no signs of human habitation within tens of thousands of miles of this area. It's the best place to intercept and kill. This old man cannot go against the promise, but I'm also worried that I'll ruin your training, so I can only escort you on this journey. Yunyang did not insist. If that's the case, thank you, senior. Your Saint Monarch path is still lacking a state of mind. Python 9 pondered for a moment before asking, Yunyang, what is a state of mind? Yunyang was silent for a moment before saying, state of mind, senior is referring to? He had been having a feeling recently that he could break through his current realm at any time and reach a higher realm. However, he was unable to break through this one step, so he was puzzled. Python 9 smiled faintly. Saint Monarch, there's a reason for the word monarch in the Saint Monarch realm, but what is a monarch? Monarch? Yunyang frowned as he pondered. Monarch. Monarch of gentlemen? Monarch of lords? Monarch of the world? Yunyang could vaguely feel that Mang Nine's words of advice were the key to his breakthrough. His heart skipped a beat as he said in a low voice, thank you, senior, for your guidance. Python 9 looked at Yunyang's calm expression and could not help laughing. You are indeed gifted, you are worth teaching. Both of them walked side by side out of Tian Fa's territory. Python 9 turned into an ordinary-looking old man, his back hunched as he stayed by Yunyang's side. Looking at his expression, he seemed a little reluctant. I'll escort you. I only need to fly over directly, so no one will be put in a difficult position. But why do you insist on walking on the ground? Especially when you want me to turn into this old man who can kill you with just a finger. This, senior, don't be anxious. This junior has benefited a lot from this gathering. It's not easy to have a chance to be alone with someone of the same gender, so I can learn from senior for a few more days. Senior is the pinnacle of the martial world. Just your commanding experience alone is more than enough for this junior to learn in a lifetime, Yun Yang said in a dignified manner. Yun Yang said in a pompous manner, let us walk slower. This junior is reluctant to part ways with senior. Python 9 was dumbfounded. You make it sound nice. It's fine if you really asked for some advice along the way, but the problem is, you didn't ask for any. What reluctance to part ways with me? I'm afraid you're reluctant to part ways with this old man, one of the best fighters in the world. This child is very cunning. Python 9 was already regretting his initiative to please Yun Yang. If he had known that Yun Yang would insist on walking like this, he would not have escorted him. With his participation, the situation had changed. It was no longer someone trying to kill Yun Yang, but Yun Yang who had set up a trap and was waiting for them to come knocking. And with Python 9, a saint-ranked super expert, by their side, wouldn't they all die if they came? Even if 10,000 people came looking for trouble, they would probably not be enough for Python 9 to kill alone. They would only go from looking for trouble to seeking death. Even if the lords of the 3 heavenly palaces came, there was no need to worry. His strength could be said to be abundant. It was too much. Yun Yang walked and stopped along the way. Initially, Python 9 thought that he could finish the journey in an hour, but Yun Yang had walked for 5 whole days and had not even completed a third of the journey. Those people, why aren't they here yet? Yun Yang mumbled in dissatisfaction. He really wanted to have a massacre to vent the frustration and dissatisfaction in his heart, but the troublemakers were still not here. Python 9 was speechless. You're so eager for them to come, this old man really wants to go back. How can you be so shameless as to use a saint as an ambush? Although he was cursing in his heart, Python 9 was more in awe of Lin Yun than anything else. Along the way, Yun Yang's tactics and traps were endless and varied. Even a saint-level expert like Python 9, who had been baptized by tens of thousands of years, felt that it was an eye-opener. Remember the mobile website, Chapter 464, Reluctance to Part Ways with Senior Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1358. Furthermore, along the tens of thousands of miles of journey, there had been continuous ambushes with very few gaps. However, when it came to using Python 9, there were not many. Most of the battles were handled by Yun Yang. As long as he could handle it, even if it took up a lot of time and energy, he would not use Python 9's strength to resolve it. Even when Python 9 thought that the opponent's combined combat power was more than a level higher than Yun Yang's and that Yun Yang could not handle it, Yun Yang still managed to hold on and handle it. Therefore, although he had Python 9 as his support along the way, there were only a few battles where Python 9's strength was actually used. All of them were when the opponent's combat power far exceeded Yun Yang's upper limit. Even in such battles, Yun Yang would lure the enemy to a specific location and only let Python 9 fight after confirming that the outside world could not know the actual situation of the battle. After all, Python 9's existence was a great treasure to Yun Yang, a trump card that could save his life. He could not allow it to be exposed prematurely. In the end, Yun Yang asked Python 9 to keep a distance away from him, either to the front or to the back. At least to Yun Yang's enemies, Yun Yang had to walk alone on the sidewalk, which made him look even more isolated and vulnerable. As for Yun Yang pretending to be heavily injured, hiding the bloodstains on him or hiding in some secret place to heal himself to lure the enemy, he had done it many times and it had worked every time. As the vanguard was defeated time and time again, the attacking enemy's combat power escalated, gradually exceeding the range that Yun Yang could handle. Fearing that there would be an accident, Python 9 sent Yun Yang away. By sending him away, he meant to tear the space apart and stop the battle. Yin Yang denied it directly and directed a new chapter instead, setting up a new situation. Yin Yang had Python 9 lie on the ground and pretend to be heavily injured. Then, as the continent's hero, Yin Yang kindly went forward to save him but was ambushed by the old man who had fallen to the ground. Then, the subsequent plot could be imagined. With such a precondition, how could those who wished for Yin Yang's death not seize the opportunity to strike when they knew about it? It was a pity that their attacks had all ended and Yin Yang had escaped to Mang Nine's side and when Mang Nine had suddenly attacked. At least at that moment, the expressions on the faces of those experts who had come to kill Yin Yang were all indescribable. All the intelligence had shown that this child was a lone wolf. How could there be an additional saint fighter? Where did this person come from? Having an additional helper was secondary, but it was strange that this helper was a saint realm expert. The number of such experts in the world could be counted on 2 hands. How could one of them suddenly appear here? When Python 9 made his move, he was naturally invincible and flawless. Yin Yang, who was responsible for cleaning up the aftermath, killed all the enemies without mercy. Throughout the entire process, Yin Yang did not utter a word or make a sound, nor did he ask for their names. Throughout, Yin Yang did not speak nor did he ask for their names. Even if you are a saint, the strongest protector of mankind, if you want to kill me, life and death are fated. Riches and honor are determined by the heavens. How can you show mercy? 9 of a speechless of him. I am a saint expert, the lord of the Tian Fa Holy Land. With such a noble identity, I am actually treated as a hired thug today, an accomplice tomorrow, a beggar, a thief, a vagrant, and even a sneak attacker who pretends to be seriously injured. You change your identity one moment, a new identity every day. You're making me feel like I'm about to collapse. I was just being polite. You've helped us a lot, so you can tell me what you need me to do. But who would have thought that you would be so impolite? Now, when he needed me, he would directly shout, "Come," he didn't even address him as Elder Mang. When I'm not needed, I'll just say, "Go, this." What the hell is this? Where was the basic respect between people? I've never thought of blocking anyone's path, nor would I take the initiative to interfere in anyone's so-called major affairs. But now that they think that I'm blocking their path and threatening their future, they want to kill me. How can I just wait to be killed? I won't be merciful. Not only will I kill such a person, but I will also kill him once and for all. In the face of Yin Yang's murderous aura, even Mang Jiao was slightly shaken. Along the way, the number of Saint Monarchs killed by Yin Yang was more than 20, and there were also a few high-level Saint Monarchs killed by Mang Jiao's help. This journey was truly a bloody path of Saint Monarchs, with all the experts dying. As for Yin Yang, the culprit of all this, his gaze and expression were calm, as if he had come on a sightseeing tour. There wasn't even a hint of murderous aura on him, which was another strange thing. Even after such a massacre, there was actually no murderous aura on him. When the human city finally appeared in the distance, Mang Jiao finally heaved a sigh of relief. The escort had finally been completed. There was no one who came to intercept them for the last 8,000 miles, but Yin Yang still continued to set up traps and made Mang Jiao cooperate. Mang Jiao had long broken down. His worldview was no longer the same, and his heart of Tao was flawed. Yin Yang, have you broken through to first level Saint Monarch? Mang Jiao asked Yin Yang. Yes. Yin Yang did not hide it. He had persevered all the way, not borrowing any strength as much as he could just to break through his own limits through the pressure of life and death. After successfully breaking through, of course, he would try his best to make use of the best resources he could and make the greatest use of Mang Jiao's trump card. Mang Jiao was silent for a moment before he said, "Can I ask you, about the word monarch, which path are you taking?" Saint Monarch, Saint Monarch. The word monarch was the path of a Saint Monarch. Countless people were trying to comprehend the word monarch. Some people walked on the path of a gentleman. Some people walked on the path of a ruler. Some people walked on the path of a false ruler. This word, unless it was related to a profound cultivator, was closely related to almost everyone in the world. Everyone could walk their own path from this word, a path that belonged to them. However, more than 99% of people could hardly step into this realm in their entire lives. Every comprehension was a different kind of path. Back then, Meng Jiao had been obsessed with this path for 3,000 years. He kept asking himself, what path am I taking? What kind of monarch am I? If one path is wrong, he would choose another one and walk it again. However, after countless attempts, he still could not step into it. It was something that could be seen but not reached. Finally, one day, he had an epiphany and stepped into the path of a saint monarch. The joy he felt at that moment was indescribable. As for Yun Yang, according to Meng Jiao's knowledge, he had only stayed at the door of the path of a saint monarch for a month or two at most. Had he already walked through it? Meng Jiao was a little doubtful and a little worried. He did not believe that Yun Yang had really advanced so quickly, but he was also worried that Yun Yang might have taken the wrong path. One wrong step and it would be hard to turn back. Once he had taken the wrong path, it would not be something that could be reversed in decades or even centuries. Yun Yang smiled and said, everyone has their own understanding of cultivation, there is no need to be selfish. I think that this word, monarch, it is not the path of a ruler, nor is it the path of a gentleman. It is only a word, a pure word. It has more meaning and it has less to do with the path I want to walk. That is all. Meng Jiao was dumbfounded. Huh? Aren't you ignoring the existence of the word monarch? This. Even with his upbringing, he could not help but look surprised when he heard Yun Yang's unexpected words. It could be said that his state of mind had been greatly impacted. He truly did not expect Yun Yang to tread such a path. The moment of realization, my state of mind was suddenly enlightened. It was only a span of 2 hours and I became a first-level saint monarch. It was also from that day onwards that our strategy against our enemies changed greatly. Yun Yang smiled and said casually, other than confirming that I had indeed broken through, I also thought that the so-called path of a saint monarch, at least when this path was first created, wasn't the original intention. It was just that it was misunderstood by the later generations. Misunderstood, Meng Jiao was speechless. If a saint monarch is a path, then a saint monarch is also a path. Saints, saint monarchs, are they not paths? Even if it is the level of a saint monarch, it is still just a level. I really have nothing more to say and there is nothing for me to comprehend. Yun Yang smiled faintly. Thank you, Senior, for escorting me along the way. We have plenty of time in the future. May we meet again. Meng Jiao was still in a daze. Nothing to comprehend? Nothing to comprehend? Yet, since the beginning of time, how many people had been tormented by this stage? Many of them did not have the opportunity and could not even advance for tens of thousands of years, dying of old age before the threshold of a saint monarch. Yet, it had fallen into this fellow's mouth so easily and disdainfully. You've been on your way. Meng Jiao wanted to remind Yun Yang to be careful and cautious, but he swallowed the words when they were at the tip of his tongue. This child really had nothing to remind him of. Along the way, his craftiness was secondary. His cautiousness were simply too much. Any kind of scheme, in the eyes of this brat, was as clear as a blazing fire. The so-called ambush, it was as if there was no place for it to hide, it was all in his eyes. Why would such a person need Meng Jiao to remind him to be careful? The ones who should be careful should be those who came to kill him. Meng Jiao chortled. This old man is leaving. Before his laughter could echo, Meng Jiao had already soared into the sky and turned into a golden ray, disappearing into the horizon. He did not bid Yun Yang farewell. He firmly believed that they would meet again one day. A person like Yun Yang would not die no matter what, as long as he did not seek his own death. Along the way, those who went against him, no matter what cultivation base they had, were all dead. Yun Yang watched Meng Jiao leave. He stood where he was for a while before he turned and flew towards the mountain he had passed. He desperately needed to find a quiet place to cultivate in seclusion for another 2 days. There was no other reason, it was because he had broken through. However, this breakthrough referred to the endless divine art. Along the way, the karmic energy that had almost been filled up was now completely filled up. In fact, there was even a bit of excess left. Emmy had grown new leaves in the subterranean space while the lotus stem beneath it had grown more than twice its original size. Yin Yang had been suppressing it until now, waiting for the moment when no one was by his side. Yin Yang moved swiftly and came to a hidden spot at the foot of the mountain. After making sure that there was no one around, he punched a hole at the foot of the mountain with a punch and quickly entered it. Countless gravel poured down from behind him, filling up the hole in a matter of breaths. Yin Yang, who had just dived in, dived tens of thousands of feet deeper into the ground. It was only then that Yin Yang began to open his deific consciousness space. Aya, Emmy's joyful voice came as expected. It extended its new leaves to Yin Yang's nose like it was presenting a treasure. Other than the color of the new leaves, the thickness, size, and even the hairs and spikes on the leaves were no different from the old leaves. Yin Yang studied Emmy carefully and realized that other than the new leaves and the lotus stem beneath it having grown a lot longer, Emmy's body had grown as well, almost twice its previous size. The entire deific consciousness space had undergone a drastic change once again. As far as the eye could see, the countless spirit herbs were all thriving. Groups of little fairies were flying back and forth, happily serving the herbs in the field. They were busy and happy, but they were enjoying it. In the sky, the purple chi that was so dense that it was almost tangible washed over the space again and again, endlessly. The herb field was now so vast that one could not see the end of it. It was like a boundless grassland. However, this grassland was made entirely of spiritual herbs and spiritual plants. Yin Yang felt that something was amiss with a glance. When he turned his head again, he could not help but be surprised. It seems like there are a lot more of these little sprites. Aya. Emmy looked proud as it waved its vines, waiting for Yin Yang's praise. Oh, as Yin Yang's thoughts raced, he came to a realization. There were already plenty of spiritual herbs in the space that had sufficient spiritual consciousness, but there was no opportunity to activate them. Now that these little sprites had come in, it could be said that they were a catalyst to activate the spiritual nature of the spiritual herbs and spiritual plants that had sufficient foundation. Emmy had, of course, added fuel to the fire in this process. Therefore, in less than a month, there were no less than 1 million little sprites in the space. With such a change, the chi of spiritual herbs and the chi of vitality had multiplied a few times compared to before. Yin Yang had a surreal feeling. In his deific consciousness space now, even a saint-level cultivator would feel suffocated if he were to breathe in it, let alone an ordinary person. The spiritual air was too thick. This kind of spiritual chi was much stronger than the spiritual chi in the Eastern Celestial Palace. Yin Yang studied the spiritual fields in detail and saw that there was a small ditch beside each herb field that flowed slowly. The water flowing in the ditch was obviously the liquid form of extremely refined spiritual chi. The spiritual chi in the sky would form droplets of water every once in a while. Just a small bottle of this spiritual chi water alone seemed to be enough to form a spiritual vein in an ordinary mountain range and supply an ordinary sect with several generations of consumption. There were also places that Emmy had specially opened up that were especially rich in spiritual chi. Those places had already begun to condense into light purple spiritual chi pellets the size of a finger. They were piled up over there, emitting a faint purple glow. The spiritual chi in these tiny spiritual pellets was even purer than the supreme-grade spiritual jade. Phew. Phew. Chapter 1359. In the deific consciousness space, other than the huge change in the spiritual farm, the place where the various rare metals were placed had also undergone a drastic change. The countless rare metals that had been collected over the past few days had been piled up there. Emmy had been busy tending to the spiritual farm and had not been able to free itself. Later on, there had been too much that it had affected Emmy's sense of beauty. After the herb field sprite's foundation was stabilized, Emmy had purposely spent a few days to sort it out and refine all the metals, leaving only the most essential parts. The metals that had once been a dozen mountains were now reduced to small mounds that were tightly clustered together, glowing in a myriad of colors. Any piece of metal here could be used to forge an unparalleled divine weapon. The remaining dregs, which were the leftovers from the refinement, and the parts that could not be used, had been temporarily stored by Emmy somewhere and isolated by the gray fog. Out of sight, out of mind. When Yun Yang came in, Emmy pulled Yun Yang over and pointed at the pile of rubbish, yelling. What it meant was, of course, get rid of this trash quickly. Yun Yang was speechless. He was underground now, how could he have the space to deal with the trash? Of course, he would have to wait until he got out. Yun Yang's advancement into a Saint Lord was related to his comprehension of the word ruler, but if it was only about comprehension, he could not have achieved a breakthrough so quickly. He had been suppressing it and was now a first-level Saint Lord pinnacle, but it was difficult to do so. The endless divine art had advanced to the next level, but he had only unleashed less than a tenth of its strength. The so-called stabilizing of the current level was mainly to sort out the new realm of the endless divine art. Endless divine art, 7th tier. After the 7 golden lotus leaves had experienced the vicissitudes of life, with the flip of heaven and earth, with a wave of the sleeve, the heart of heaven and my heart, only then will I know that the world of mortals is still the same. After the vicissitudes, as Yun Yang felt the endless divine art slowly flowing into his meridians, he tried to comprehend these 4 lines. With the flip of heaven and earth, with a wave of the sleeve, only then will I know that the world of mortals is still the same. Yes, now that he had come this far, it was only then that he received news of Ji Lingxi and the rest. Looking back on the past, it felt like it was just yesterday. The world of mortals is still the same. Yin Yang sighed softly. After the breakthrough, the endless divine art's power was immensely powerful. It had even increased his understanding of the power of laws. Just the first contact with it, the boundless power had already shocked Yin Yang. However, Yin Yang was not surprised by the breakthrough. Instead, he was touched by the new incantation. The world of mortals is still the same, but what about people? He suddenly had the urge to go back to the profound sky continent to take a look. What happened to the world that had nurtured him? How were old Marshal Chiu and the others? Little nephew, how is he now? Was everything going well? There were also many good friends, the 4 young masters, and their former comrades. All of them seemed to have frozen in front of their eyes. Thinking of this, Yun Yang could not help feeling a sense of melancholy. The world of mortals is still the same, but I wonder if my old friends are still there? Amidst the haze, a figure suddenly appeared, wielding the blade of heaven's will. Destiny Blade Technique, the 7th move. The 7th stance of the Destiny Blade Technique was still one saber with 2 forms. The first form, Vicissitudes of the Saber. The second move, Red Dust Saber. Unsheathing the saber to calm the vicissitudes of life, no worries in the world of mortals, no injuries, watching the waves of blood rise to the sky, letting the world run wild. Yin Yang comprehended all of this, slowly entering a mystical world of nothingness and nothingness. Time passed quietly as Yun Yang continued to meditate. This time, the period of enlightenment was unprecedentedly long for Yun Yang. In the blink of an eye, half a year had gone by. To a cultivator, half a year's worth of closed-door cultivation was nothing. It was not worth mentioning, but it was extraordinary for Yun Yang. The people in the outside world, especially, were beginning to panic. Half a year without a trace also meant that Yun Yang had disappeared. He had gone missing. How could the bound of universe's meritorious servant disappear? He wore a fox's face. Because he was sealed by the demonic race's heaven-sealing formation, he could no longer change his appearance. He was extremely conspicuous in the bound of universe. No matter where he went, he would be recognized immediately. Even if he had a black cloth covering his face, it was of little use. He could just remove the mask to confirm the identity of the suspicious masked person. Yin Yang had nowhere to hide. Yet, he had disappeared just like that. The higher-ups of the Eastern Celestial Palace, Western Holy Palace, and Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace were extremely anxious. Whether it was those who were worried about Yun Yang or those who wanted to kill Yun Yang, they were all burning with anxiety. In total, there were 14 to 15 batches of people who had gone out to kill Yun Yang. The Eastern Celestial Palace had sent 6 batches, the Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace had sent 4, and the Western Holy Palace had sent 5 batches of experts. It was understandable that Yun Yang had disappeared, but the problem was that the people who had gone out to kill Yun Yang had disappeared as well. There were more than 50 Saint Monarchs, but none of them could be seen if they were alive or dead. This was too strange. Yin Yang had stirred up a storm in the demonic race previously, causing millions of demonic race members to fall. There were many extraordinary experts among them, but only the 12 dragon guards of the dragon race had reached the level of Saint Lords. The rest of the Saint Lords who were involved in the battle were at most injured, but none of them had truly perished. However, this incident had caused so many Saint Lords to go missing. If all of them had fallen, the overall loss of the human race's combat power would be even greater than the demonic race's. That was not good news. The Eastern Celestial Palace. Dongfang Haoran's expression was dark. Looking at the 4 middle-aged men in front of him, his eyes were cold. Among the 4 of you, who knows? Who doesn't? Among these 4 people, one was Dongfang Haoran's son, and the other 3 were his disciples. They were known as the 4 Heavens Prides in the Eastern Celestial Palace. At the same time, they were also the 4 successors that the Eastern Celestial Palace was grooming. In the future, those who would try to enter the Supreme Heaven Pavilion to be selected would definitely be these 4. In other words, if Yin Yang did not appear, the next ruler of the Eastern Celestial Palace would definitely be one of these 4 people. The 4 people in front of Dongfang Haoran had uniform expressions. Their faces were solemn, a little angry, a little wronged, and a little worried. I did not do this, nor did I receive any information about this. Dongfang Haoran's son, Dongfang Xingchen, was the first to speak. His tone was even more furious. These fellows have gone too far. How could they do such a thing? Yin Yang is now the hero of the Bound of Universe, the continent's role model. His contributions to the present generation will be beneficial to the future generations. These people actually dared to do such a shady business. Father, this kind of thing must be put to an end. No matter who did it, they must be investigated and punished severely. There must be someone else behind the person who did it. They must also be investigated and investigated thoroughly. Don't let them go unjustly. Dongfang Haoran's hawk-like gaze took a long look at his son before he looked at the other 3. And Xinyu, Yuzhenxiao, Lai Kuangfeng, what do the 3 of you think? And Xinyu, who had the most gentle and elegant temperament among them, smiled faintly. Young Palace Lord's words are reasonable. The current situation is not just too much. It should be said that the pain of the close ones makes the enemy happy. Other than concurring, this disciple also suggests a thorough investigation. No matter what the original intention of the person who did it was or whether the person behind them had given the instruction, they must be disqualified. Otherwise, it won't be enough to serve as a warning to others. Dongfang Haoran squinted his eyes at Yuzhenxiao and asked, "What do you say?" This disciple agrees, Yuzhenxiao, who was full of vigor, said. This disciple feels that the most urgent matter isn't to investigate the source, but to ensure sect leader Yun Yang's safety. This disciple volunteers to assist sect leader Yun. We will travel side by side and protect him closely. Lai Kuangfeng had a leopard's head and round eyes. He had a rough beard and his skin was as black as charcoal. Dongfang Haoran said faintly, "It's confirmed that they're not in the palace at the moment. They've already disappeared. Until now, the 4 of you have followers who haven't returned. According to what Xinyu and Yuzhenxiao said, the 4 of you can basically be disqualified. Do you know that?" And Xinyu and Yuzhenxiao paled at the same time. There's such a thing? Dongfang Xingchen and Lai Kuangfeng turned their heads at the same time, staring at them like hawks. And Sinew said honestly, this matter was definitely not instigated by me. If it was me, I, and Sinew, have never gone back on my word for what I've done for so many years. Yu Zhenxiao shook his head and smiled bitterly. This matter came too abruptly. It's an interesting twist of events. It's very confusing. The four people's expressions were flawless, without a single flaw. Dongfang Haoren's face was still calm, but there was a dark flame burning in his eyes. Honestly, this matter had infuriated Dongfang Haoren. It was fine if something like this happened to the other celestial palaces, but the East Celestial Palace just had to have people involved as well, and there were quite a number of them. Yin Yang's matter, which he had been the mastermind behind, actually had such a humiliating turn of events. Where was his dignity? Since none of you have any objections, this matter shall be concluded as such. I'll investigate this matter with all my might. Once I find out that there's someone among you who instigated this, that person will lose the right to inherit the Celestial Palace. Dongfang Haoren paused for a moment before continuing, speaking of which, there are many reasons for this matter. Putting myself in your shoes, I can understand your feelings and understand your momentary confusion. If any of you, no matter who it is, explain the matter yourself, I'm not an unreasonable person. It'll only be an internal punishment, and I won't pursue responsibility in the future. I'll also be more lenient on that person's behalf. He looked at his son and his disciple expectantly. A person's heart was always biased. Dongfang Haoren did not wish for the culprit of Yun Yang's misfortune to be his son or disciple. Even if it was them, Dongfang Haoren was willing to give them a chance. To an elder, making a mistake was not something to be afraid of. As long as one could face one's mistake squarely and admit it, one would be a good child and could still be saved. Therefore, Dongfang Haoren made this promise personally. He hoped that his beloved successor would cherish this chance and not miss it. Because this was the only chance to turn back. This matter has nothing to do with me. I'm not involved at all. Dongfang Xingchen was very calm. He shook his head lightly and looked at the other three with a mocking gaze. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not involved at all. And Sinew smiled faintly, her eyes filled with sincerity as she said, my three junior brothers, if what you did is, there is no need to endure so bitterly. Master has always kept his promise. Since I've already made a promise, I will never go back on it. Don't let go of this chance to turn back easily. A single slip will lead to eternal regret, and when you turn back, it will already be 100 years later. Yu Zhenxiao said in a low voice, it has nothing to do with me. Although you said that this matter has nothing to do with you, I still have to give you a word of advice. Master's promise is worth 1,000 gold. If you lose this opportunity, it won't come again. Don't make a mistake. You must know that whether or not you did it is the truth. It is hard to cover it up. Sect leader Yun is not dead now. As long as he testifies, it is only a matter of time before the truth comes out. Senior brothers and junior brothers, don't regret it. Lai Guangfeng said in a low, muffled voice, I didn't do it anyway. If you regret a promise, it has nothing to do with me. He rolled his eyes and said, to be honest, there aren't many people who follow me. Master, you shouldn't have included me in this list. I don't have any competition at all. It's really meaningless to accompany the exam. Dongfang Haoren closed his eyes and revealed an indescribable smile. He said, my promise only ends today. After today, it will be gone forever. It will be too late to find me to admit my mistakes. I'll say this first, so don't blame me for not warning you. The four nodded at the same time, many thanks to Master, Father, we will remember. Good, good, good. Dongfang Haoren stood up and his voice became very cold, you've all grown up. Take care of yourselves. Before his voice fell, his figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. The four looked at each other in dismay, not saying anything for a long time. Who did this? Let's quickly find Master and explain it. The person involved didn't die, so it's not a big deal. There will always be a way to turn things around. Lai Guangfeng said in a rough voice, right now, we're just holding on to it. It's tiring for everyone, making it so that I won't be able to get out of this mess. Why bother? When the other three heard this, they all gave a cold snort and went their separate ways. His figure flashed and Dongfang Haoran had already returned to his secret room. He sat down in a chair and pinched the space between his eyebrows, his face filled with depression. In the empty room, a voice suddenly sounded. Did none of them admit it? No, as expected, no one admitted it. Hee. That voice said, then what are you going to do next? Dongfang Haoran lightly said, I've already given them a chance. You need to be careful. That voice reminded him. Of course, my promise will continue until tonight. This is the final deadline. After that, life and death will be decided by fate, wealth and honor will be decided by the heavens. Dongfang Haoran snorted and said, speaking of which, I think Shimen Fengfu and Beigong Liuli will not be any better off than me. He gave a deep sigh. If humans could eliminate this kind of scheming between their own people, how good would that be? You have to know that even the strongest fortress will be broken from within. After fighting for humanity for so many years, why can't we see through it even now? This so-called power, is it really that important? The mental state of a peak human cultivator is only this, nothing more than this. Once mysterious yellow is taken over by the Yao race due to internal strife, even if they become the master of the heavenly palace, what can they do? Why can't they understand such a simple logic? Dongfang Haoran looked up at the sky and sighed, I'm very disappointed. That voice was silent and did not make a sound. He completely understood Dongfang Haoran's feelings. But he was also clear that even if these people understood this logic, they would still do it. Everyone knew how to play tricks, everyone knew how to talk about logic, but how many people could actually do it? The word power was enough to make over 99% of the people in history be blinded by greed. They would do their best and would not waver even in death. Palace Master, this matter, let's wait and see for now. He still gave his own suggestion, if we forcefully interfere, I'm afraid, it will have the opposite effect. At that time, it will be even worse. Dongfang Haoran's eyes were cold, I'm very interested right now. I want to see how daring they are and how bad the situation will be at that time. There were 2 meetings in 3 consecutive days. Chapter 1360. Dongfang Haoran was right. The leaders of Western Heaven's Saint Palace and Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace were furious as well. Facing the few successors chosen by themselves and the elders, they were filled with regret and rage. However, all the successors said in unison that it had nothing to do with them. Shimen Fafu was enraged. Is it really none of your business? Or perhaps, in your minds, it's none of your business as long as you don't instruct or do it yourself. With your status and position today, do you still need such shallow and crude methods? You don't even need to say a word, just a hint from your eyes, a slight change in your expression, and it's enough to make everything happen. Do you still insist that it has nothing to do with you? Or do you think that I can't do anything to you just because your methods are flawless and you didn't leave any concrete evidence? Do you know how your actions put the safety of the entire bound of universe and all the humans in it? How much effort has the palace spent to nurture these experts for so many years? Don't tell me it's just to let your little desire for power be consumed in this most despicable of battles. So many top-notch human cultivators didn't die in the hands of the demons, but in the hands of their own kind, in the hands of a human hero who has just been acknowledged. This is the greatest humiliation and irony, and what a tragedy it is. Shimen Dofu's furious roar shook the entire Western Heaven's sacred palace, causing it to tremble. However, his 2 sons and 2 disciples in front of him looked like they had a clear conscience, and they were innocent. Father, please calm down. Master, please calm down. We really didn't do it. It really has nothing to do with us. The Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace was also in a similar situation. All of the qualified candidates refused to acknowledge him. There was nothing Bei Gong Liuli could do about it. The number of high-level experts who came out to kill Yun Yang increased, and the murderous aura intensified. Then, everyone, including the masters of the 3 heavenly palaces, had an answer that they desperately wanted to know. Where had Yun Yang gone? Why did it seem like he had vanished into thin air? If he was waiting for an opportunity to escape, wasn't he too good at hiding? In addition, the experts who had set out to kill Yun Yang had disappeared as well, as if they had never existed in this world. Be it the killers or the victims, none of them are alive or dead. Where did all these bastards go? Even if he's dead, there should at least be some traces. Where's the corpse? Why is it so strange? Can't it make people less worried? The 3 great heavenly palaces all had their own unique methods to find out where their subordinates were. Even if they had died, they would still be able to locate them. This was so that it would be easier to guide the soul fragments back. None of the clans still had the extravagant hope that those who had gone to intercept them were still alive, because the life tablets they had left in the palace had all been broken. They must have all died, fallen. But even if he was dead, where did he die? Where did he die? How did he die? How did he die? How did he die? There wasn't even a trace of his soul fragment. Could it be that sect leader Yun actually has a method to devour the souls of saints? Slowly, there were more and more experts on the 2 possible routes that Yun Yang could take. One of them, of course, led from the East Palace to the residence of 9 Supremes. The other led to the residence of 9th Supremes in the demonic palace of Northern Wilderness. As for Yun Yang's encounter, the residence of 9 Supremes and the residence of 9th Supremes had begun to move in secret as well, coming to his aid. Among the Demiurge Flawed 10 in the residence of 9 Supremes, other than Ping Xiaoyi and Guan Nuanyang, Shi Wuchen and the rest had all been dispatched, coming through the night. On the other hand, Ji Lingxi and Shengguan Lingxiu had personally made their move, coming in a grandiose manner, keeping a high profile wherever they passed. Everything else aside, rendezvous with Yun Yang was not the best plan. Doing so would only make him an obvious target, especially when the news that was spread was that the people who wanted to kill Yun Yang were top-notch cultivators from the 3 heavenly palaces. They were all saint lords. Whether it was Shi Wuchen or Ji Lingxi, their cultivation base had improved tremendously. It was still like a mantis trying to stop a chariot when they were up against a saint lord. If they were to really rendezvous with Yun Yang, not only would they become a burden, they would also be an unnecessary burden to Yun Yang. However, they had to at least create a commotion and spread it to the world, telling Yun Yang where they were. If you're in danger, if you're in trouble, you can come in this direction. We'll face it together. Even if they could not meet up for the time being, they could not expose themselves recklessly. They could communicate in secret, and there was a certain degree of control in between. Shi Wuchen and the 2 ladies believed that Yun Yang would definitely be able to control this degree. For a moment, the bound of universe looked calm on the surface, but the undercurrents were surging in the dark. What surprised everyone was that Yun Yang was completely oblivious to all of this. He, who was underground, was cultivating in seclusion, concentrating on his cultivation, intending to advance further. The cultivation process this time was very different from all the previous ones. The demonic heaven ceiling formation was still in place, preventing his body from absorbing any external spiritual qi. He could only rely on the deific consciousness space within him to be self-sufficient. Another effect of this situation was that the spiritual qi in the outside world did not fluctuate at all in Yun Yang's current cultivation state. Even the most skilled cultivator would not be able to sense it. This was also the fundamental reason why the 3 great heavenly palaces' assassins had no target to search for. The moment Yun Yang ascended to the level of a saint, the residence of 9 Supreme Celestial Luck Banner reacted immediately and changed again. The entire territory of the residence of 9 Supremes turned into a spiritual qi ocean, raging like a tsunami, filling the entire realm. At that moment, everyone within a radius of 5,000 kilometers fell silent. That day, Dong Qitian immediately decided to join the residence of 9 Supremes and become the official Great Elder. That day, Dong Qitian's intestines were swollen. He regretted it. If I had joined the residence of 9 Supremes earlier, Yun-Yang had successfully led the sect to upgrade to a middle-class celestial luck banner, I would have reaped a wave of benefits. If Yun-Yang had advanced to a Supreme Saint and the residence of 9 Supreme Celestial Luck banner had changed accordingly, I would have reaped another wave of benefits. When the residence of 9 Supremes was bestowed with an upper-class Celestial Luck banner, I would have reaped another wave of benefits. And now, as the founder of the residence of 9 Supremes, Yun-Yang, has ascended to the level of a saint, I would have reaped another wave of benefits. Now, when so many benefits are happening, I've never left the residence of 9 Supremes, but I've King missed none of them. I even have to join the residence of 9 Supremes at this time because I'm afraid I'll miss the next wave of benefits. But I've already missed the first 4 waves. Dong Qitian was filled with regret. My sect is long gone. What am I waiting for? I've long seen that Yun-Yang is not an ordinary person, and the residence of 9 Supremes must have a great development. But I've been hesitating and boasting about my identity. Now, it's too late for regrets. Sigh. To join the residence of 9 Supremes, one must worship the founder of the sect. But who was the founder of the residence of 9 Supremes? Who else could it be other than Yun-Yang? Dong Qitian stood there for a long time, sulking, but he could not kneel no matter what. F***ck. How could your father forget this? I actually have to kneel and kowtow to this child. But if you don't worship the founder, you're not considered to have truly joined the residence of 9 Supremes. Dong Qitian hypnotized himself in the end. I'm actually just a youth. I'm only 14. Strictly speaking, it's only been 3 to 4 years since I was saved by Yun-Yang, returned to this world, and regained my new life. I'm only 3 to 4 years old. If that's the case, that child is my second parent. What's wrong with me kneeling to him? It's nothing. It's really nothing. He kept on hypnotizing himself, and kept on. Finally, Dong Qitian joined the residence of 9 Supremes. It was just that the old man felt that his face had long been thrown to the demon race. After insisting on completing the ceremony, he immediately returned to his cave abode to cultivate. A few months later, he still felt his face burning up. It was too shameful. Dong Qitian slapped himself hard twice. F***ck, your father is so shameless. I've even thrown away my dignity for the sake of cultivation. If Yun-Yang was here, he would only need to say the word and the sect's great elder would be done. There would be no need to kneel and worship, there would definitely be resources allocated to him, and he could use them as he wished. He would be treated the same as the leader of the sect and so on. Now, however, Yun-Yang was not here. He had to kneel and worship to complete the ceremony. Dong Qitian felt that he was too ashamed to face anyone. On the other side, it was even more rebellious. At the Phoenix Cry sect side, Gan Tianyan and Ping Zhenyue, the 2 leaders of the sect, were dumbfounded. All the Phoenix Cry sect's higher-ups were hopping mad as well. The disciples whom they had spent so much effort to snatch from the residence of 9 Supremes had collectively rebelled. In spite of this, they actually approved of these disciples' rebellion from the bottom of their hearts. There was nothing wrong with it. To these disciples, it was really impossible for them to not rebel. We didn't expect to come here at all. All of you forced us and promised us, tricking us here. Now, compared to our original companions, our cultivation is directly lagging behind by at least 4 major realms. Back then, everyone was still a gold mystic or earth mystic. Although there was a gap, it was just a little. With a little effort, we could catch up. Some of them were even a lot weaker than us. Now, we've advanced to heaven mystic, but everyone else is a venerable or saint. The one who improved the fastest among them is already a saint king. This gap, back then, we were just a bunch of little kids. Now, we're still little kids, but some of them already have a name in the martial world. Some of the little brothers who were with us back then have already entered some rankings. A large group of the little sisters who were with us back then have already become fairies in the martial world, and we're still doing it here, You're not leading us astray, you're setting us up for our deaths. Faced with such a situation, Ping Jinyue and Gan Tianyan were at their wits' end. What should they do? In all fairness, the progress of these disciples was several times faster than that of the regular disciples of the Phoenix Cry sect. They were indeed geniuses, and the higher-ups of the Phoenix Cry sect were very pleased with them. They would never forget what they had done at that time. However, this little bit of progress could not catch up to the residents of 9 Supremes, who had advanced a level in a few days. When the leader became the lord of the sect, everyone followed him. When the sect was promoted to a high-class sect, everyone followed him again. Now that the leader of the sect was promoted to a great sage, everyone naturally followed him and ascended to the heavens again. Although these were all done in passing, they were all special cases that could not be replicated or repeated. In the future, such benefits would never appear again. This was because these benefits could only appear when the celestial luck banner's level rose and the founder's personal achievements. It was impossible for Yun Yang to fall and then rise again, right? Even so, there would never be a second benefit like this, the residence of 9 Supremes. If we go further up, it'll be the palace of 9 Supremes, Gan Tianyan sighed. Ping Jinyue was speechless for a long time. She had nothing to say. Luolua's cultivation has already caught up to mine. If I were to fight with her, other than taking advantage of her experience, I wouldn't have any other way to keep that girl in check. Gan Tianyan sighed again, her eyes flickering. Ping Jinyue was still speechless. Of course, Jiang Luoluo was not completely a member of the residence of 9 Supremes. She still had the identity of Phoenix Cry sect's eldest senior sister, but as the daughter-in-law of Luo Dajiang, the founder of the sect, she could be considered half a member of the residence of 9 Supremes. So much so that, her cultivation base also rose along with it. It had only been a short time, but she had already caught up to Gan Tianyan. As for Luo Dajiang and the others, their current cultivation base had already greatly surpassed all the higher-ups of Phoenix Cry sect. This reality made the higher-ups of Phoenix Cry sect feel both aggrieved and envious. When they first came to the residence of 9 Supremes, the spiritual qi there was already several times thicker than ours. Now, it's more than 10 times stronger. Ping Jinyue could only sigh and say nothing else. Such a sect is too terrifying. We're the chief of the middle-class sect now, just one step away from the upper-class sects, but why do we feel so much worse than the residents of 9 Supremes? Why do we look so shabby? A few elders whispered to each other. Gan Tianyan also sighed. Compared to the residents of 9 Supremes, we feel like we're even more inferior than a lower-class sect. How should I put it, other than being upset, there's nothing else. Some of the higher-ups who had stayed in Phoenix Cry sect all year round were even more jealous. You're still upset? No matter what, you can take turns to cultivate in the residence of 9 Supremes. Look at your cultivation base, it's just a gradual improvement. You've already pulled ahead of us, okay? How can you still talk like this? If you're upset, then we don't even need to live anymore. If we're really upset, we're the ones who are upset, okay? Faced with the various situations of Phoenix Cry sect, Ping Jinyue felt a headache coming on. She felt one thing thoroughly, the people's hearts were scattered, and it was difficult to lead the team. I'm so hot that my whole body is sticky. I have to shower 4 to 5 times a day. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.